Picture this. You're scrolling through endless YouTube videos at 2 a.m. Your brain craving something familiar yet fascinating to drift off to. Well, buckle up because I've got a treasure trove of Family Guy secrets that'll either help you sleep peacefully or keep you wide awake wondering how this animated chaos machine actually works. From behind-the-scenes drama to mind-bending production facts, these random tidbits about the Griffin family will give your brain exactly what it needs for that perfect sleepy time content. Let me start with something that'll blow your mind right off the bat. The voice of Stewie Griffin, that diabolical baby genius we all know and love, is performed by the show's creator, Seth MacFarlane himself. But here's the kicker that most people don't realize. MacFarlane originally based Stewie's voice on the legendary actor Rex Harrison, who played Professor Henry Higgins in My Fair Lady. That posh, sophisticated British accent that makes Stewie sound like he stepped out of a Victorian manor. It's basically a baby doing an impression of a 1,960 seconds Broadway star. The irony is delicious when you think about it. This character who spends half his time plotting world domination is essentially channeling a musical theater legend. Now, if you think that's wild, wait until you hear about the show's near-death experience that almost prevented it from becoming the cultural phenomenon we know today. Family Guy was actually canceled not once, but twice, by Fox. The first cancellation happened in 2002 after just 3 seasons, and for a hot minute there, it looked like the Griffin family was done for good. But then something magical happened that literally brought the show back from the dead. DVD sales and Adult Swim reruns created such a massive fan following that Fox had no choice but to resurrect it in 2005. It's like the show became a zombie that refused to stay buried, clawing its way back to life through sheer fan devotion. The creation story of Family Guy itself reads like something out of a fever dream. Seth MacFarlane was just 24 years old when he pitched the show to Fox, making him one of the youngest people ever to create and run their own animated series for a major network. He literally animated the entire pilot episode by himself, spending months hunched over a desk drawing frame after frame while surviving on probably nothing but coffee and determination. The original pitch was actually inspired by his college thesis film called The Life of Larry, which featured a middle-aged man with a talking dog. Sound familiar? That little student film eventually evolved into the multi-million-dollar empire we know today. Speaking of that talking dog, Brian Griffin holds a special place in animation history for reasons you probably never considered. Unlike most cartoon pets who remain perpetually animal-like, Brian is essentially a human character who just happens to be a dog. He drives cars, drinks martinis, writes novels, and engages in complex philosophical debates. MacFarlane has stated that Brian represents his own voice in the show more than any other character, which explains why the dog often serves as the moral compass of the family. It's basically MacFarlane having conversations with himself through a talking animal, which, when you think about it, is either brilliant or slightly concerning. The show's controversial humor didn't emerge by accident. It was a carefully calculated rebellion against traditional family sitcoms. MacFarlane deliberately set out to create the anti-Simpsons, something that would push every boundary the Simpsons wouldn't touch. Where the Simpsons used gentle satire and heartwarming family moments, Family Guy went nuclear with shock, humor, and deliberately offensive content. The Cutaway gags, those random flashback sequences that became the show's signature, were originally MacFarlane's solution to a problem he had with traditional sitcom pacing. He wanted to break free from the constraints of linear storytelling and create something that felt more like channel surfing through a fever dream. Here's a production detail that'll make you appreciate the craft behind the chaos. Each episode of Family Guy takes approximately 10 months to complete, from initial script to final animation. That means the episodes you're watching right now were being worked on almost a year ago. The animation process alone involves hundreds of artists working across multiple studios, with the initial designs created in California before being sent overseas for full animation. It's like a massive international relay race, where each handoff has to be perfect or the whole episode falls apart. The voice acting sessions are apparently legendary affairs that sound more like comedy improv shows than traditional recording sessions. MacFarlane voices not just Stewie, but also Brian, Peter, and Glenn Quagmire, often having entire conversations with himself in the recording booth. The other voice actors have described watching him switch between characters mid-sentence as both impressive and slightly unsettling. Imagine seeing someone argue with themselves in 4 different voices while maintaining perfect character consistency. It's basically like watching a one-man theater performance in real time. One of the most fascinating aspects of Family Guy's production is how the writer's room operates. Unlike many animated shows that plan seasons far in advance, Family Guy's writing process is notoriously chaotic and last-minute. Writers have described sessions where entire episodes get scrapped days before animation begins, leading to frantic rewrites and sleepless nights. This seat-of-the-pants approach actually contributes to the show's unpredictable energy, but it also means that voice actors sometimes receive new scripts literally hours before recording sessions. The show's relationship with censorship has been a constant dance between pushing boundaries and avoiding network wrath. Family Guy has developed an almost scientific approach to testing limits, deliberately writing jokes that are slightly more offensive than what they actually want to air, knowing that network censors will demand cuts. The final version that reaches viewers is often the writer's actual intended content, achieved through strategic overwriting and negotiation. It's psychological warfare, disguised as comedy writing. McFarlane's musical background plays a much larger role in the show than most people realize. Before creating Family Guy, he was actually a jazz vocalist and pianist, which explains the numerous musical numbers scattered throughout episodes. Those elaborate song and dance sequences aren't just random comedy bits. They're genuine musical theater productions compressed into cartoon format. McFarlane has stated that he views Family Guy as partly a variety show, using the Griffin family as a framework to showcase different types of entertainment within each episode. The character designs themselves tell an interesting story about animation philosophy. Notice how the Griffin family members all have distinctly different body shapes and facial structures, unlike many cartoon families where everyone looks like variations of the same template. Peter's round, doughy appearance was specifically designed to contrast with Lois's sharp, angular features, while Stewie's football-shaped head was meant to make him instantly recognizable even in silhouette. These design choices weren't arbitrary. They were carefully calculated to ensure each character would be visually distinct even in crowded scenes or quick cuts. Here's something that'll change how you watch the show forever. The infamous chicken fights between Peter and Ernie the Giant Chicken weren't originally planned as recurring segments. The first chicken fight was supposed to be a one-off gag, but the animation team had so much fun creating the over-the-top action sequence that it became a running theme. Those elaborate, destruction-filled battles that seem to last forever? They're essentially the animation team showing off their action sequence skills in a comedy show, like flexing creative muscles that don't usually get exercised in traditional sitcom animation. The show's approach to celebrity guest stars is uniquely twisted compared to other animated series. While most cartoons treat celebrity appearances as special events, with the famous person playing themselves or a character clearly meant to be them, Family Guy often buries celebrity voices in minor roles without any fanfare. A-list actors will voice background characters for single lines, and viewers might never realize they just heard a famous person deliver a throwaway joke. It's the entertainment industry equivalent of hiding expensive ingredients in cheap fast food. Family Guy's international versions reveal fascinating cultural differences in humor. In some countries, entire episodes have been rewritten because the original jokes simply don't translate, not just linguistically, but culturally. What Americans find hilarious might be completely incomprehensible to audiences in other parts of the world, leading to localized versions that are essentially different shows with the same characters. It's like each country gets its own flavor of the Griffin family chaos, tailored to local sensibilities. The merchandising empire built around Family Guy extends into some surprisingly niche markets. Beyond the obvious t-shirts and DVDs, there are Family Guy-themed wine collections, luxury watches, and even high-end collectible sculptures that cost thousands of dollars. The show that built its reputation on lowbrow humor has somehow spawned upscale merchandise that wouldn't look out of place in expensive boutiques. It's cultural cognitive dissonance at its finest. The writing staff includes people from incredibly diverse backgrounds: former stand-up comedians, Harvard graduates, television veterans, and complete newcomers to the industry. This mix creates a unique creative environment where highbrow intellectual humor crashes into street-level comedy instincts. The result is a show that can reference obscure philosophical concepts in one scene and make fart jokes in the next, often within the same episode. Animation errors in Family Guy have become something of a cult fascination among fans. Unlike other shows that try to hide mistakes, Family Guy occasionally leaves obvious animation goofs in the final product, either intentionally, as Easter eggs, or because the production schedule doesn't allow for fixes. These errors have spawned online communities dedicated to spotting and cataloging every miscolored character, floating object, or impossible perspective. It's accidental, interactive entertainment, where viewers become detectives hunting for visual inconsistencies. The show's theme song, that bouncy piano melody everyone knows by heart, was originally much longer and included additional verses that were cut for time. The full version tells a more complete story about the Griffin family's dynamics, but network television's rigid timing requirements forced it down to the bare essentials. MacFarlane has occasionally performed the complete version at live concerts, giving fans a glimpse of what could have been the opening sequence if television had more flexible formatting. Voice acting for animated shows requires a completely different skill set than live-action performance, and Family Guy pushes these demands to extremes. The actors often need to deliver lines while laughing, crying, or even while their characters are supposed to be eating, fighting, or running. This means recording sessions frequently involve voice actors doing physical comedy performances in sound booths, acting out entire scenes with just their voices, while making exaggerated facial expressions that no one will ever see, but that somehow make the vocal performance more authentic. The show's relationship with current events creates unique production challenges. Because episodes take months to complete, jokes about contemporary issues often feel dated by the time they air, leading to a complex balancing act between topical relevance and timeless humor. Writers have developed strategies for creating content that feels current without being tied to specific news cycles, though sometimes they get caught off guard when major events happen during production and their carefully planned episodes suddenly seem tone-deaf or prescient in ways they never intended. Family Guy's influence on internet culture extends far beyond just memes and viral videos. The show's cutaway gag structure essentially predicted how people would consume media in the social media age. Short, disconnected bursts of content that don't require following a linear narrative. Those seemingly random flashbacks that interrupt the main story? They're basically the television equivalent of scrolling through TikTok or Twitter, jumping from one unrelated thought to another without warning. The economics behind Family Guy reveal interesting insights into how modern television actually works. Despite being an animated show with relatively high production costs, it's incredibly profitable because animated content doesn't age the same way live-action shows do. There are no aging actors demanding higher salaries, no physical sets that deteriorate, and no location shoots that become impossible due to changing landscapes. The Griffin family can theoretically exist forever without any of the logistical problems that eventually kill most television series. Behind all the controversy and chaos, Family Guy operates like a massive creative experiment in pushing the boundaries of what television can be. Every episode is essentially asking the question, what if we tried this completely ridiculous thing and somehow made it work within the framework of a family sitcom? Sometimes the experiments fail spectacularly, but when they succeed, they create moments of television that are genuinely unlike anything else on the air. The show has created its own internal mythology that's become increasingly complex over the years. Character relationships, running gags, and callback references have built up layers of continuity that reward longtime viewers while potentially confusing newcomers. It's like a secret club where the membership requirement is having watched hundreds of hours of animated chaos, and the reward is understanding jokes that are incomprehensible to everyone else. And here's perhaps the most interesting fact about Family Guy. Despite all its success and cultural impact, the show remains fundamentally unpredictable. After more than 2 decades on the air, it can still surprise viewers with completely unexpected creative choices, bizarre guest appearances, or experimental episodes that break its own established rules. In a television landscape increasingly dominated by formulaic content, Family Guy maintains a chaotic creativity that keeps audiences guessing what might happen next. So there you have it, a deep dive into the wonderfully weird world behind one of television's most controversial animated families. Whether you're drifting off to sleep or staying wide awake in fascination, these facts reveal just how much complexity hides behind what appears to be simple cartoon chaos. Sweet dreams, and remember, in the Griffin household, normal is just another word for boring. Picture this: you're lying in bed, scrolling through your phone, and your brain is buzzing with the day's chaos. You need something familiar, something comforting, something that'll help you drift off into peaceful sleep. Well, tonight we're diving into the wonderfully weird world of Quahog with some random Family Guy facts that'll ease you into dreamland. So grab your favorite pillow, get cozy, and let me tell you some fascinating tidbits about America's most dysfunctional animated family that might just surprise you. Did you know that Family Guy was actually canceled not once, but twice? The show first got the axe in 2002 after just 3 seasons. Fox executives thought the ratings weren't strong enough to justify keeping it alive. But here's where it gets interesting. The show found new life through DVD sales and reruns on Adult Swim. The DVD sales were so phenomenal that they broke records for animated series at the time. Fans were buying up seasons faster than Peter could down a beer at the Drunken Clam. This unprecedented demand from home video sales convinced Fox to bring the show back in 2005, making it one of the first series ever to be resurrected primarily due to DVD performance. The voice behind Peter Griffin, Seth MacFarlane, actually does most of his recording sessions incredibly quickly. While many voice actors take hours to perfect their performances, MacFarlane can knock out an entire episode's worth of dialogue in about 2 hours. That's pretty impressive when you consider he voices not just Peter, but also Brian, Stewie, and Glenn Quagmire. His rapid recording style comes from his background in radio, where timing and efficiency were absolutely crucial. MacFarlane developed his distinctive character voices during his college years at the Rhode Island School of Design, where he actually created an early version of Family Guy as his senior thesis project. Speaking of voices, here's something that might keep you pondering as you fall asleep. Stewie's accent isn't actually British. Seth MacFarlane has explained that Stewie's voice is meant to be a sort of generic upper-class accent that could come from anywhere. It's a theatrical, affected way of speaking that's supposed to make Stewie sound sophisticated and pretentious, regardless of geographic origin. The inspiration came from old Hollywood actors and theater performers who adopted similar speech patterns to sound more refined. The character of Glenn Quagmire has one of the most disturbing backstories in animated television, though it's mostly revealed through throwaway gags and quick references. His middle name is apparently Quentin, and he's supposedly been a pilot since the 1960 seconds, which would make him significantly older than he appears. The show has hinted that he's been involved in various historical events, always in morally questionable ways. His famous catchphrase, "giggity," wasn't actually in the original character design. It evolved naturally during Seth MacFarlane's recording sessions and became so popular with the writers that they started incorporating it into more and more episodes. Here's a fact that might make you appreciate the show's attention to detail. The Griffin family's house layout is incredibly consistent throughout the series. The writers and animators keep detailed floor plans to ensure that rooms connect properly from episode to episode. This level of continuity is actually quite rare in animated sitcoms, where houses often seem to have magical expanding and contracting rooms depending on what the plot needs. The Griffin house is based on an actual home in Cranston, Rhode Island, though it's been modified significantly for animation purposes. Brian's character has evolved dramatically since the show's early days. Originally, he was written as more of a straight man to Peter's antics, serving as the voice of reason in the household. However, as the series progressed, the writers began exploring Brian's flaws more deeply. His pretentiousness, his drinking problem, his romantic failures, and his writing aspirations all became major character traits. This evolution reflects Seth MacFarlane's own growth as a writer and his willingness to make his characters more complex and sometimes less likable. The show's cultural impact extends far beyond television screens. Family Guy has influenced internet meme culture in ways that few other shows can claim. The Roadhouse Cutaway gag became a popular meme format years before most people even knew what memes were. The "oh no" moments, the chicken fights, and countless other Family Guy references have become part of online vernacular. This digital footprint has helped keep the show relevant with younger audiences who might discover it through social media rather than traditional television viewing. One of the most interesting aspects of Family Guy's production is how cutaway gags are created. The writers have a separate room where they brainstorm completely random, unrelated jokes that can be inserted into episodes when needed. These gags are often written months before they're actually used, and they're stored in a database that writers can search through when they need to fill time or add comedy to a scene. This system allows for the show's signature non-sequitur humor, while maintaining a consistent production schedule. The character of Meg has been voiced by 2 different actors, though most viewers probably never noticed the change. Lacey Chabert voiced Meg during the first season, but Mila Kunis took over starting in Season 2. The transition was so seamless that it barely registered with audiences. Mila Kunis has mentioned in interviews that she initially tried to match Lacey Chabert's interpretation of the character, but eventually developed her own approach. Interestingly, Kunis was also voicing Jackie Burkhardt on That 70 Seconds show at the same time, showcasing her range as a voice actor. Family Guy's relationship with censorship has been fascinating to observe over the years. The show has pushed boundaries consistently, sometimes getting away with content that surprises even longtime viewers. However, there are also episodes that have been banned or heavily edited for various reasons. The censorship battles have actually become part of the show's identity, with Seth MacFarlane and the writers often incorporating discussions about censorship directly into episodes. The show's approach to celebrity guest stars is uniquely irreverent. Unlike many animated series that treat celebrity appearances as special events, Family Guy often has famous people, voice characters, who are immediately killed off or humiliated in some way. This approach reflects the show's general irreverence towards celebrity culture and its willingness to bite the hand that feeds it. Many celebrities have appeared on the show specifically because they wanted to be made fun of, which says something interesting about the show's cultural position. Here's something that might surprise you. Family Guy has actually won several Emmy nominations and awards over the years. While it's often dismissed as lowbrow humor, the show has been recognized for its voice acting, animation, and music. Seth MacFarlane's musical numbers, in particular, have received critical acclaim. His background in musical theater shows through in episodes featuring elaborate song and dance sequences, which often rival those found in major animated films. The show's international versions are fascinating studies in cultural adaptation. Different countries have had to handle the show's content in various ways, sometimes changing jokes entirely to make them relevant to local audiences. In some cases, entire episodes have been restructured because certain references or situations don't translate across cultural boundaries. These international versions offer interesting insights into how humor travels, or doesn't travel, across different societies. Family Guy's merchandise empire is surprisingly extensive and eclectic. Beyond the typical t-shirts and action figures, there have been Family Guy board games, cookbooks, and even meditation guides. The show's merchandising success demonstrates how deeply it has penetrated popular culture. Fans don't just watch Family Guy, they incorporate it into various aspects of their lives through products that extend the show's universe into the real world. The writing process for Family Guy involves what the staff calls manatee balls, a reference to a South Park episode that made fun of Family Guy's writing style. The writers actually embraced this criticism and lean into the randomness that South Park was mocking. They've developed systems for generating increasingly absurd combinations of references, situations, and characters. This self-aware approach to their own writing style has become part of the show's meta-humor. Seth MacFarlane's other projects have often served as testing grounds for Family Guy concepts. The Orville, his science fiction series, actually uses some of the same character dynamics and humor styles that he developed for Family Guy, just in a different setting. Similarly, American Dad and The Cleveland Show served as laboratories where different aspects of the Family Guy formula could be explored and refined. The show's relationship with current events is complex and ever-evolving. Family Guy often references things that happened months before episodes air due to production schedules, but the writers have developed techniques for keeping the show feeling current. They've also mastered the art of making jokes that feel timeless, even when they're about very specific cultural moments. One aspect of Family Guy that often goes unnoticed is its sophisticated understanding of animation history. The show regularly pays homage to classic animation styles, from Disney to Warner Brothers to obscure experimental films. These references serve multiple purposes. They demonstrate the creator's deep knowledge of their medium. They provide visual variety, and they create inside jokes for animation enthusiasts. The show's impact on other animated series cannot be overstated. Family Guy's success opened doors for more adult-oriented animated programming and influenced the humor styles of countless other shows. Its willingness to break the fourth wall, its pop culture reference density, and its approach to controversial topics have all been adopted and adapted by other animated series. As you drift off to sleep, consider this. Family Guy represents a unique moment in television history, where traditional broadcast standards, internet culture, and animation technology all converge to create something entirely new. The show emerged just as DVD sales were becoming important, just as internet memes were developing, and just as animation technology was becoming sophisticated enough to support rapid production schedules. The voice actors have developed such strong relationships with their characters that they often improvise during recording sessions. These improvisations frequently make it into the final episodes, adding spontaneity to what could otherwise be very controlled animation. The chemistry between voice actors, even when they're recording separately, comes through in the final product in ways that feel natural and unforced. Family Guy's legacy will likely be its demonstration that animated television could be both commercially successful and artistically ambitious while maintaining an irreverent, anti-establishment attitude. It proved that audiences were hungry for content that didn't talk down to them, that referenced the full spectrum of popular culture, and that wasn't afraid to offend or surprise. So as you close your eyes tonight, remember that somewhere in the world, someone is discovering Family Guy for the first time. Someone else is rewatching their favorite episode, and the creators are probably working on new ways to surprise, shock, and entertain audiences. In the grand tradition of animated comedy, Family Guy continues to push boundaries, challenge expectations, and remind us that sometimes the most comforting thing about entertainment is its complete unpredictability. Sweet dreams, and remember, tomorrow is another day in Quahog, where anything can happen, and usually does. Hey there, night owls and Family Guy fanatics. If you're scrolling through YouTube at 3 in the morning looking for something to help you drift off to dreamland, you've stumbled upon the perfect video. Tonight we're diving deep into the bizarre, hilarious, and sometimes completely unhinged world of Family Guy with some truly wild facts that'll either lull you to sleep or keep you wide awake wondering how Seth MacFarlane's mind actually works. So grab your favorite blanket, dim those lights, and let's explore the wonderfully weird universe of Quahog, Rhode Island. Trust me, by the end of this journey through Family Guy's most fascinating secrets, you'll either be peacefully snoozing or have a whole new appreciation for just how crazy this show really gets. Let's start with something that might blow your mind. Did you know that Family Guy was actually canceled not once, but twice? Yeah, you heard that right. The show first got the axe in 2002 after just 3 seasons, and Fox thought they were done with the Griffin family forever. But here's where it gets interesting. The show found new life through DVD sales and reruns on Cartoon Network's Adult Swim block. The ratings were so incredible that Fox literally had to eat humble pie and bring the show back in 2005. Then, believe it or not, they canceled it again in 2007, only to reverse that decision just months later. Talk about a roller coaster relationship between a network and a show. Speaking of relationships, let's talk about the voice behind our favorite talking baby, Stewie Griffin. Seth MacFarlane doesn't just voice Stewie, he also voices Brian, Peter, Glenn Quagmire, and several other characters. But here's the kicker. MacFarlane based Stewie's voice on the accent of English actor Rex Harrison, who you might know from the classic musical My Fair Lady. Yeah, that sophisticated, slightly pompous British accent that makes Stewie sound like an evil mastermind. It's straight from a Broadway legend. MacFarlane has said in interviews that he wanted Stewie to sound like an old-school English gentleman, which makes it even funnier when this supposedly refined character is plotting world domination from his crib. Now, if you think the show pushes boundaries on television, you should hear about some of the stuff that never made it to air. The writers and animators have created countless scenes, jokes, and entire storylines that were deemed too controversial even for Family Guy's standards. And considering what does make it onto television, that's really saying something. There's apparently an entire vault of unused content that could probably fill several seasons worth of episodes. Some of these rejected bits have made their way onto DVD releases as deleted scenes, but many remain locked away forever, too wild even for the show known for having no limits. Here's something that might surprise you about the show's production process. Unlike many animated series that plan out entire seasons in advance, Family Guy often operates more like a live-action sitcom. The writers frequently come up with ideas on the spot, and episodes are sometimes completely rewritten just weeks before they're supposed to air. This spontaneous approach explains why the show can feel so fresh and unpredictable, but it also leads to some pretty intense crunch times for the animation team. Imagine trying to animate complex scenes with just days to spare before broadcast. Let's dive into some character secrets that most fans never realize. Brian the dog. everyone's favorite intellectual canine, was originally supposed to be just a regular pet. In the original concept, Brian was going to be a typical dog who couldn't talk and would just bark and fetch like any normal household pet. Seth MacFarlane decided to make him a talking character at the last minute, and thank goodness he did, because Brian's philosophical conversations and sarcastic wit have become some of the show's most memorable moments. It's wild to think that one of the most complex characters almost didn't have a voice at all. The show's animation style has some fascinating secrets too. Those seemingly simple character designs actually take an enormous amount of work to create. Each character has hundreds of different facial expressions and poses that animators can mix and match. Stewie alone has over 300 different mouth positions just for speaking different sounds. The animators have to keep track of all these variations to maintain consistency across episodes. It's like having a massive digital puppet show where every single movement has to be carefully orchestrated. Here's a fact that might make you appreciate the show's music even more. Seth MacFarlane isn't just the creator, writer, and voice actor for multiple characters. He's also a legitimate recording artist who's released several albums of traditional pop standards. His musical background heavily influences the show, which is why you'll notice that Family Guy has more musical numbers than most animated comedies. Those elaborate song and dance sequences aren't just thrown in for laughs. They're crafted by someone who genuinely understands musical theater and classic American songbook traditions. The show's cultural impact goes way beyond just entertainment. Family Guy has actually influenced real-world events and conversations. Politicians have referenced the show in speeches. Academics have written scholarly papers about its social commentary, and it's been credited with introducing younger audiences to cultural references they might never have encountered otherwise. Think about how many classic movies, TV shows, songs, and historical events you first learned about through a Family Guy Cutaway gag. The show serves as this weird cultural bridge between different generations of entertainment. Now let's talk about some of the show's most controversial episodes and why they're so memorable. The writers have never shied away from tackling sensitive subjects, and sometimes their approach has sparked genuine debates about comedy, censorship, and social responsibility. Some episodes have been pulled from rotation, others have been edited for different markets, and a few have become legendary among fans, specifically because they push things too far. This willingness to court controversy has kept Family Guy relevant for over 2 decades, even as television landscape has changed dramatically around it. The voice acting process for Family Guy is unlike anything you'd expect. Seth MacFarlane often records multiple characters in the same session, essentially having conversations with himself. He'll record Peter's lines, then immediately switch to Brian's voice to respond, then jump to Stewie for the next exchange. Watching him work in the recording booth is apparently like witnessing someone with multiple personality disorder having a very organized conversation with themselves. Other voice actors have said it's both impressive and slightly unsettling to watch. Here's something that connects to the show's longevity. Family Guy has aired over 400 episodes, making it one of the longest-running animated series in television history. To put that in perspective, if you watched every single episode back-to-back, you'd be sitting there for more than 150 hours straight. That's almost a full week of continuous Family Guy content. The show has literally created enough material to entertain someone for an entire week without sleeping, eating, or taking a single break. The show's international versions reveal some fascinating cultural differences. Family Guy is broadcast in dozens of countries, and each version has to navigate different censorship standards and cultural sensitivities. In some countries, entire jokes are replaced with completely different content. In others, characters' names are changed, and certain running gags are modified to make sense to local audiences. There are versions of Family Guy where the cultural references are so different that they're essentially completely different shows with the same characters. Let's explore some behind-the-scenes drama that most fans never hear about. Like any long-running show, Family Guy has had its share of creative disagreements, contract disputes, and personality conflicts. Seth MacFarlane has been very public about his occasional frustrations with the show, even stepping back from day-to-day involvement for several seasons. There have been disputes over storylines, character development, and the general direction of the show. Some former writers and voice actors have shared stories about heated arguments in writers' rooms and recording sessions that had to be stopped because of creative differences. The show's merchandising empire is absolutely massive, but some of the most interesting products never made it to market. There have been proposed Family Guy video games, theme park attractions, and even a planned Broadway musical that would have featured the Griffin family in live-action musical theater. The legal and logistical challenges of adapting animated characters for different mediums have killed dozens of potential projects over the years. Imagine walking through a Family Guy theme park, or watching actors in Peter and Lois costumes singing on Broadway. Here's a production secret that reveals how much work goes into each episode. A single 22-minute episode of Family Guy requires approximately 8 months to complete from initial concept to final broadcast. The process involves dozens of writers, voice actors, animators, sound engineers, and editors. Every single frame is reviewed multiple times. Every joke is analyzed and often rewritten. And every visual gag is carefully planned and executed. What looks like simple animation on screen represents thousands of hours of collaborative creative work. The show's relationship with censorship has created some legendary stories. There are episodes that exist in multiple versions, with different levels of content depending on when and where they're broadcast. The uncensored DVD versions of some episodes contain jokes and scenes that have never been seen on television. Meanwhile, daytime reruns are edited so heavily that some episodes are barely recognizable. The writers have learned to create content in layers, knowing that different versions will need different levels of editing for different audiences. Family Guy's influence on internet culture deserves its own discussion. The show has generated countless memes, viral videos, and online discussions. Certain episodes have become legendary specifically because of how they're shared and referenced online. The show's cutaway gag format translates perfectly to social media, where short, punchy jokes can be easily shared and remixed. Some Family Guy moments have become more famous as internet memes than they ever were as television content. The voice acting talent that has appeared on Family Guy reads like a who's who of entertainment. Celebrities often jump at the chance to appear on the show, sometimes playing themselves, sometimes voicing original characters. The guest star list includes everyone from major Hollywood actors to political figures to professional athletes. Some celebrities have become recurring characters, while others have appeared just once but created memorable moments that fans still talk about years later. Here's something that might change how you watch the show. Many of the seemingly random cutaway gags are actually carefully constructed references to specific movies, TV shows, or historical events. The writers spend considerable time researching these references to make sure they're accurate, even when they're being completely absurd. There are entire databases that catalog every cultural reference in every episode, and the depth of knowledge required to understand all the jokes is honestly staggering. The show's animation has evolved significantly over its run, but not always in ways you might expect. While the overall character designs have remained consistent, the background art, lighting effects, and scene composition have become much more sophisticated. Early episodes look almost primitive compared to recent ones, but the evolution has been so gradual that most viewers don't notice. Comparing the pilot episode to current episodes is like looking at completely different shows that happen to use the same characters. Family Guy's impact on other animated shows cannot be overstated. The success of Family Guy paved the way for countless other adult animated comedies, from American Dad to Rick and Morty to BoJack Horseman. The show proved that animated comedies could tackle adult themes and attract mature audiences, opening up an entire genre that barely existed before. Many current animators and writers cite Family Guy as a direct influence on their work and career choices. The show's approach to storytelling often breaks conventional narrative rules in fascinating ways. Episodes frequently abandon their main plots entirely for extended tangents. Characters regularly break the fourth wall to address the audience directly, and the show often parodies its own format and conventions. This meta approach to comedy requires a level of self-awareness that's rare in television, and it's part of what keeps longtime fans engaged, even after hundreds of episodes. As we wind down this journey through Family Guy's hidden world, it's worth reflecting on how a cartoon about a dysfunctional family in Rhode Island became such a cultural phenomenon. The show succeeds because it taps into something fundamentally human about finding humor in chaos, about laughing at things that probably shouldn't be funny, and about the strange comfort of familiar characters behaving in completely unpredictable ways. Whether you're drifting off to sleep or wide awake thinking about animated comedy theory, Family Guy continues to surprise, offend, entertain, and occasionally enlighten its audience after more than 20 years on the air. The show's ability to constantly reinvent itself while maintaining its core identity is perhaps the most impressive fact of all. Sweet dreams. And remember, somewhere in Quahog, the Griffin family is probably getting into trouble that's even weirder than anything we've discussed tonight. The chaos never really stops. And somehow, that's exactly what makes it so perfect for helping restless minds finally find peace. Until next time, sleep tight and don't let the giant chicken nightmares bite. Picture this. You're lying in bed, scrolling through your phone at 2 in the morning, and suddenly, you remember that time Peter Griffin literally married a cardboard cutout of himself. Welcome to the weird, wild world of Family Guy, where the most random facts are often the most fascinating ones. Tonight, we're diving deep into the strangest corners of Quahog, with facts so bizarre they'll either help you drift off to sleep or keep you awake, wondering how the writers even came up with this stuff. Let me start with something that'll blow your mind. Did you know that the original concept for Family Guy was completely different from what we got? Seth MacFarlane initially pitched the show as a much darker comedy about a dysfunctional family dealing with serious issues. The network executives were so confused by the pilot that they almost didn't pick it up. Thank goodness they did, because otherwise, we wouldn't have gems like the time Brian became a used car salesman and accidentally sold Death his own car. Speaking of Brian, here's a fact that might surprise you. The character was originally supposed to be much more of a background character, basically just the family pet who occasionally made sarcastic comments. But Seth MacFarlane loved voicing him so much that Brian gradually became one of the main characters. This explains why Brian's personality seems to evolve so dramatically throughout the early seasons. He went from being a simple talking dog to a pretentious intellectual with daddy issues and a drinking problem. Now let's talk about something truly random. The chicken fight scenes between Peter and Ernie the giant chicken weren't supposed to become a recurring gag. The first fight scene in the episode Da Boom was meant to be a one-off joke. But the animators had so much fun creating the elaborate fight sequence that they kept bringing it back. Each subsequent chicken fight got more elaborate and destructive, eventually involving helicopters, submarines, and entire city blocks being demolished. The longest chicken fight lasted nearly 4 minutes of screen time, which is practically an eternity in television comedy. Here's something that'll make you appreciate the show's attention to detail. Every time you see the Griffin house, the layout is actually consistent throughout the series. The creators took the time to map out every room, every hallway, every closet in the house, so that when characters move around, it makes spatial sense. This is incredibly rare in animated comedies, where houses often have impossible layouts that change depending on what the joke requires. The Griffin house blueprints are actually available online, and fans have used them to build accurate replicas in video games and even real life. Moving on to character quirks. Did you know that Meg's unpopularity at school was originally supposed to be temporary? The writers planned to have her eventually find her place and become more confident, but the running gag of everyone treating Meg terribly became so popular with audiences that they decided to make it a permanent part of her character. Mila Kunis, who voices Meg, has said in interviews that she sometimes feels bad about all the abuse her character receives, but she understands that it's become essential to the show's dynamic. Let's dive into some voice acting trivia that's perfect for late-night pondering. Seth MacFarlane voices 4 main characters on the show, but he almost didn't voice Stewie at all. The original plan was to have Stewie voiced by a child actor, but MacFarlane was worried about the controversial things Stewie would say and didn't want to put a real child in that position. So he developed Stewie's distinctive British accent as a way to make the character's adult thoughts coming from a baby's mouth even more surreal and funny. Chris Griffin's voice is another interesting story. Seth Green, who voices Chris, has to actively make his voice higher and more nasal to sound, like a teenage boy. As Green has gotten older, it's become more challenging for him to hit those high notes, so the sound engineers often have to digitally adjust his voice in post-production. This is why Chris's voice sometimes sounds slightly different between episodes, depending on how much digital manipulation was required. Here's a fact that connects to real-world events in a weird way. The episode where Peter starts his own political party called the Tea Party Patriots was written and animated before the actual Tea Party movement became prominent in American politics. When the episode aired, many viewers thought it was a commentary on current events, but it was actually just an incredible coincidence. The writers had to add a disclaimer explaining that any similarity to real political movements was purely accidental. Now for something completely different. The Pawtucket Brewery, where Peter works, is based on a real brewery in Rhode Island. Seth MacFarlane grew up in the area and used to drive past the brewery every day. He thought it would be funny to have his lazy cartoon character work at a place that produces something that would make him even lazier. The real brewery owners were initially concerned about being associated with the show, but eventually embraced it when they realized it was bringing them tourists. Let's talk about some of the show's more obscure running gags. You know how Conway Twitty always seems to appear at random moments? This started as an inside joke among the writers who were fans of old country music. They would play Conway Twitty songs during late-night writing sessions to keep themselves awake. Eventually, they decided to work him into the show as a bizarre non-sequitur that would confuse viewers and break up the pacing in unexpected ways. The Conway Twitty segments are actually some of the most expensive parts of the show to produce because they have to pay for the music rights. Here's something that'll make you look at Cleveland differently. When Cleveland got his own spin-off show, the original plan was for him to stay in Quahog, and the spin-off would focus on his adventures around town. But the writers realized that would be too limiting. So they created the elaborate storyline where his house gets destroyed and he moves to Virginia. The bathtub falling through multiple houses scene took months to animate and became one of the most memorable moments in the show's history, even though it was essentially just a setup for a spin-off that only lasted 4 seasons. Speaking of spin-offs, did you know that there was almost a Stewie and Brian road trip series? The popularity of their travel episodes convinced executives that the dynamic between the sophisticated baby and the intellectual dog could carry its own show. Scripts were written for 6 episodes before the project was scrapped due to budget concerns. Some of those unused scripts were later reworked into regular Family Guy episodes, which explains why some Stewie and Brian adventures feel more elaborate than usual. Let's get into some animation secrets that most viewers never notice. The way characters' eyes are drawn actually follows a complex mathematical formula to ensure they always look natural when the characters move their heads. This might sound boring, but it's actually fascinating when you realize that most animated shows just wing it and hope for the best. Family Guy's attention to eye movement is part of what makes the characters feel more alive and expressive than typical cartoon characters. Here's a weird fact about the show's merchandising history. The most popular Family Guy product ever sold wasn't a t-shirt or a toy. It was a cookbook called The Family Guy Cookbook that featured recipes supposedly created by each character. Peter's section was all comfort food and beer-based dishes. Lois had elegant dinner party recipes. Stewie contributed sophisticated international cuisine. And Brian's section was dinner for 15, entirely vegetarian. The cookbook actually received positive reviews from real food critics, which nobody expected. Now, for some trivia about the show's cancellation and revival that goes beyond what most people know. When Family Guy was first canceled, Seth MacFarlane was actually relieved. He was exhausted from working on the show and wanted to pursue other projects. But the DVD sales were so strong and the fan campaign so persistent that Fox offered him a deal he couldn't refuse, including complete creative control and a substantial budget increase. This is why the post-cancellation episodes often feel more ambitious and experimental than the early ones. The show's relationship with censors has always been complicated. But here's something most people don't realize. Family Guy actually has one of the most cooperative relationships with network censors of any adult animated show. Seth MacFarlane learned early on that if you give censors multiple options and let them feel like they're part of the creative process, they'll often let you get away with more controversial content. The writers deliberately write jokes they know will get cut, just so they can negotiate to keep the jokes they really want. Let's talk about some character backstories that were developed but never made it into episodes. Quagmire was originally supposed to have a twin brother who was everything he wasn't, completely respectful and monogamous. This character was going to be introduced as a way to explore Quagmire's personality through contrast, but the writers decided it would be funnier to keep him as an irredeemable character without any redemptive family members to soften his edges. Joe Swanson's backstory is much more detailed than what we see on screen. The writers created an entire timeline of his police career before his accident, including the names of his partners, his most famous cases, and even his police academy graduation rank. None of this has ever been mentioned in the show, but it helps the writers keep his character consistent and gives them material to draw from when they need Joe to demonstrate police knowledge or skills. Here's something about the show's music that might surprise you. Every musical number in Family Guy is performed live by the voice actors, even when their characters are supposed to be bad singers. Seth MacFarlane, who has released several jazz albums, insisted on this approach because he believes it makes the musical moments feel more authentic. This means that when Peter sings off-key, Seth MacFarlane is actually deliberately singing badly, which is apparently much harder than just singing well. The relationship between Family Guy and The Simpsons goes deeper than their famous crossover episode. The two shows' writing staffs have been trading jokes and references for years in a friendly rivalry that most viewers never notice. If you watch carefully, you'll spot subtle Simpsons references in Family Guy episodes and vice versa. This tradition started when several Family Guy writers were hired away from The Simpsons, and they maintained friendships with their former colleagues. Now, here's a production fact that explains a lot about the show's pacing. Family Guy episodes are actually written to be about 30 minutes long, but they're edited down to fit the 22-minute television format. This means there are about 8 minutes of content cut from every episode. These deleted scenes aren't just throwaway jokes either. They often contain character development and plot details that would make the episodes feel more complete. Some of these deleted scenes have been released on DVD collections, and they often change how you interpret the episodes. The show's approach to celebrity guest stars is completely different from most animated comedies. Instead of having celebrities play themselves or obvious parodies of themselves, Family Guy often casts them as completely random characters. This creates a fun game for viewers who recognize the voices but can't immediately place where they know them from. Adam West playing the mayor was the template for this approach, and it's been incredibly successful at attracting high-profile guest stars who want to try something different. Let's explore some of the show's more philosophical elements that get overlooked because of all the random humor. The relationship between Stewie and Brian is actually a sophisticated exploration of the friendship between youth and experience. Stewie represents unlimited potential and ambition, while Brian represents the reality of compromise and disappointment that comes with age. Their adventures often end with both characters learning something, but in subtle ways that don't feel preachy or forced. The show's treatment of time travel and alternate realities follows surprisingly consistent rules. The writers created an internal logic system for how these sci-fi elements work in the Family Guy universe, even though they rarely explain it to viewers. This attention to detail is why the time travel episodes feel coherent instead of just random, and it allows them to create genuine consequences for the characters' actions across multiple episodes. Here's something about the animation process that most people never consider. Each episode of Family Guy requires approximately 15,000 individual drawings. The animators have developed shortcuts and techniques to make this process more efficient, but it still takes about 8 months from the initial script to the finished episode. This explains why the show sometimes references events that seem outdated by the time the episode airs. The references were current when the episode was being written and animated. The voice recording process is also more complex than most people realize. While some animated shows record all the voices separately, Family Guy often records the main cast together in the same room. This creates more natural-sounding conversations and allows the actors to play off each other's energy. Seth MacFarlane switches between his different character voices during these sessions, which the other actors say is both impressive and slightly disturbing to witness in person. Now for some trivia about the show's impact on popular culture that goes beyond the obvious memes and catchphrases. Family Guy has been credited with popularizing the rapid-fire pop culture reference style that's now common in comedy. Before Family Guy, most TV shows would make 1 or 2 cultural references per episode. Family Guy started making dozens of references per episode, training audiences to catch quick jokes and creating a more interactive viewing experience. The show's influence on internet culture is also significant. Family Guy was one of the first TV shows to embrace online fan communities and viral marketing. The creators regularly engage with fans on social media and have incorporated fan suggestions into actual episodes. This relationship between creators and fans has become the standard for modern entertainment. But Family Guy was pioneering this approach when most TV executives were still afraid of the internet. Finally, here's a fact that brings everything full circle. Despite all the random humor and bizarre storylines, Family Guy is actually one of the most carefully planned shows on television. Every season has an overarching theme that connects the episodes, even though these themes are subtle enough that most viewers don't consciously notice them. The writers map out character development arcs that span multiple seasons, ensuring that even the most outrageous episodes contribute to larger storytelling goals. As you drift off to sleep tonight, Remember that somewhere in the world, there are people whose full-time job is deciding exactly how long Peter Griffin's fights with a giant chicken should last. Sweet dreams, and may your nights be filled with fewer random cutaway gags than the average Family Guy episode. Have you ever wondered why Family Guy episodes feel like fever dreams that somehow make perfect sense at 3 in the morning? Tonight, we're diving into the most bizarre, unexpected, and downright weird facts about this animated chaos machine that's been keeping us entertained and slightly disturbed for over 2 decades. From secret celebrity cameos you never noticed to production secrets that will change how you watch every episode, these facts are perfect for those late-night rabbit holes when your brain needs something wonderfully random to chew on. Picture this. It's 1999, and a young Seth MacFarlane is sitting in a cramped animation studio, probably surviving on nothing but coffee and pure creative madness, sketching out what would become one of television's most unpredictable shows. But here's something that might surprise you. Family Guy was actually rejected by multiple networks before Fox finally took a chance on it. The original pilot was so different from what we know today that Peter Griffin didn't even have his signature chin dimple. That's right, the most recognizable feature of television's most chaotic dad was an afterthought added later in development. Speaking of Peter Griffin's design, here's a fact that will blow your mind every time you see him on screen. Seth MacFarlane has admitted that Peter's appearance was directly inspired by a security guard he encountered at his college. This unnamed hero of late-night campus safety became the visual foundation for a character who would go on to terrorize animated television for decades. Imagine being that security guard and randomly discovering years later that you're the face of one of America's most beloved cartoon disasters. But the real magic happens when you start digging into the voice acting secrets. Seth MacFarlane doesn't just voice the main characters, he performs Stewie, Brian, Peter, and several recurring characters, often having entire conversations with himself during recording sessions. The studio engineers have described these solo recording sessions as watching someone have the world's most entertaining mental breakdown. MacFarlane literally argues with himself, switches between character voices mid-sentence, and somehow maintains the distinct personality of each character flawlessly. Here's where things get really interesting from a production standpoint. The show's writers have a tradition called the random joke jar, where they collect the most absurd, context-free gags throughout the season. When they're stuck on an episode or need to fill time, they literally reach into this jar and randomly select bizarre scenarios to animate. This explains why you'll be watching a normal family dinner scene that suddenly cuts to a 3-minute sequence about a time-traveling sandwich. It's not lazy writing. It's intentionally chaotic creativity with a system behind the madness. The cutaway gags that make Family Guy so distinctive weren't originally planned to be such a huge part of the show. In early episodes, they used these random flashbacks sparingly. But when they noticed these moments got the biggest laughs and the most social media attention, they leaned into the format completely. Now, these seemingly random interruptions are carefully crafted to hit specific comedic beats and often take longer to animate than the main storyline of entire episodes. One of the most mind-bending facts involves the show's relationship with celebrity guest stars. Many A-list celebrities have appeared on Family Guy without most viewers ever realizing it because their characters are so obscure or brief. Drew Barrymore once voiced a background character who had exactly 3 words of dialogue spread across 2 episodes. The producers love casting major stars in tiny roles as inside jokes for the industry, creating this weird Hollywood treasure hunt for eagle-eyed fans. The character of Stewie Griffin underwent one of television's most subtle character evolutions. In early seasons, Stewie was genuinely intended to be an evil genius baby-plotting world domination. But as the show progressed, the writers began exploring his character's vulnerability and intelligence in different ways. The transition was so gradual that most viewers didn't consciously notice when Stewie evolved from potential supervillain to the show's emotional center and Brian's best friend. This character development happened organically through hundreds of small writing decisions across multiple seasons. Here's something that will change how you watch every Brian and Stewie episode. Their relationship was originally supposed to remain antagonistic throughout the series. The writers planned for Brian to be constantly annoyed by Stewie's schemes and intellectual pretensions. However, the voice acting chemistry between Seth MacFarlane's 2 characters was so natural and compelling that the writers began crafting episodes specifically around their friendship. Some of the show's most acclaimed episodes including the time travel and multiverse adventures, exist purely because the Brian-Stewie dynamic became too interesting to ignore. The animation process for Family Guy involves secrets that most fans never consider. Each episode requires approximately 4 months from initial script to final animation, but here's the weird part. They often animate scenes completely out of order, based on character availability and studio scheduling. This means the emotional arc of an episode might be animated backwards, with the climactic scenes completed weeks before the setup scenes. The animators have to maintain character continuity and emotional consistency without seeing the full episode in sequence until the very end of production. Musical numbers in Family Guy aren't just random comedic choices. They serve a specific psychological function in the show's pacing. The writers discovered that musical sequences reset viewer attention spans and create natural breaks in the chaotic energy that defines most episodes. When you feel overwhelmed by rapid-fire jokes and cutaway gags, a musical number gives your brain permission to reset and re-engage with the storyline. It's basically psychological manipulation disguised as entertainment, and it works perfectly. The show's relationship with censorship creates some of the most interesting behind-the-scenes stories. Family Guy pushes boundaries so consistently that the network has entire meetings dedicated to determining what crosses the line versus what's cleverly subversive. The writers have become experts at crafting jokes that technically comply with broadcast standards while still managing to be completely inappropriate. They've turned censorship navigation into its own art form, often making the censored versions of jokes funnier than the original uncensored concepts. Here's a fact that demonstrates the show's cultural impact in ways you might not expect. Family Guy references have been spotted in congressional hearings, Supreme Court footnotes, and international diplomatic communications. Politicians and legal scholars apparently watch the show and unconsciously incorporate its humor patterns into serious discourse. There's something simultaneously hilarious and terrifying about the idea that Stewie Griffin's speech patterns are influencing actual government policy discussions. The economics behind Family Guy reveal fascinating insights into modern television production. Each episode costs significantly more to produce than most people realize because of the sheer amount of custom animation required for cutaway gags. A single random flashback sequence might require creating entirely new character designs, backgrounds, and animation styles that will never be used again. The show essentially produces mini-movies within every episode, making it one of the most expensive animated series on television, despite its seemingly simple art style. Voice recording sessions for Family Guy episodes are legendary among industry professionals for their complete unpredictability. Seth MacFarlane often improvises entire scenes in character, creating alternate versions of jokes that the writers never conceived. Sometimes these improvised moments are so funny that entire episode plots get rewritten around a single spontaneous line delivery. The recording booth becomes this weird laboratory where cartoon characters take on lives of their own and influence their own storylines. The show's treatment of controversial topics follows a specific comedy philosophy that Seth MacFarlane has described as equal opportunity offense. The writing team maintains detailed charts tracking which groups, topics, and themes they've targeted to ensure their irreverence remains balanced across the political and social spectrum. This systematic approach to controversy means every offensive joke is part of a larger pattern designed to prevent the show from developing any consistent political agenda beyond general chaos. Cleveland's spin-off show, The Cleveland Show, was actually conceived as a way to explore Family Guy's universe from a completely different perspective while maintaining the same comedic DNA. The failed experiment taught the creators valuable lessons about what makes Family Guy specifically work versus what elements translate to other formats. Cleveland's return to Family Guy brought with him subtle character changes informed by his solo series experience, creating this weird continuity where a character evolved through his own failed show. The internet age has transformed how Family Guy episodes are created and consumed. The writers now monitor social media reactions to episodes in real time and adjust future storylines based on which jokes generate the most memes and viral moments. This feedback loop means the show is constantly evolving to match internet culture while simultaneously influencing internet culture. It's become this weird, symbiotic relationship where the show and its online fan base co-create content together. Animation errors in Family Guy often become intentional running gags when fans notice and celebrate them online. The production team has learned to embrace happy accidents, sometimes deliberately recreating animation mistakes in future episodes as callbacks to their own imperfections. This self-aware approach to production errors creates additional layers of humor for dedicated fans while maintaining accessibility for casual viewers. The show's influence on other animated series is more extensive than most people realize. Writing techniques, character development approaches, and comedic timing patterns pioneered by Family Guy appear throughout modern animated television. Shows that seem completely different often use Family Guy's structural innovations adapted to their own specific styles and audiences. It's become the secret template for contemporary animated comedy without most viewers consciously recognizing the influence. As you drift off to sleep tonight, remember that somewhere in the world, animators are probably working on next season's episodes, crafting new combinations of chaos and creativity that will eventually become someone else's late-night viewing experience. Family Guy continues to exist in this weird space between sophisticated entertainment and absolute nonsense, providing the perfect mental soundtrack for those moments when your brain needs something familiar yet unpredictable to focus on while the rest of the world sleeps. The show's legacy isn't just about the jokes or the characters. It's about proving that television audiences are capable of appreciating complexity disguised as simplicity, intelligence hidden within apparent randomness, and genuine emotional moments embedded in absolute chaos. Sweet dreams, and may your unconscious mind sort through all this delightful weirdness while you rest. Have you ever wondered why Peter Griffin's laugh is so weirdly infectious, or how Family Guy predicted some of the most bizarre real-world events years before they happened? Tonight, we're diving deep into the most mind-bending facts about Family Guy that will either put you to sleep or keep you awake thinking about how insane this show really is. Picture this. You're lying in bed, scrolling through streaming services, and you land on Family Guy. Maybe you've seen every episode a dozen times, or maybe you're just discovering the chaos that is the Griffin family. Either way, there are secrets hidden in plain sight that even the most dedicated fans miss. From voice acting mysteries that will blow your mind to cultural references so obscure they require a PhD to understand, Family Guy is way more complex than anyone gives it credit for. Let's start with something that sounds completely made up but is absolutely true. Seth MacFarlane, the creator of Family Guy, was supposed to be on one of the planes that hit the World Trade Center on September 11th. He had a ticket for American Airlines Flight 11, but missed it because he was hungover and his travel agent gave him the wrong departure time. That single hangover and scheduling mix-up literally changed television history. Without that random twist of fate, we never would have gotten the Griffin family or any of Seth's other animated shows. But here's where it gets even weirder. Family Guy has this uncanny ability to predict future events that borders on supernatural. Remember the episode where Peter hurts his knee and makes that hissing sound while sucking air through his teeth? That became one of the most recognizable memes on the internet, years before memes were even called memes. The show was creating viral content before viral content existed. Speaking of predictions, Family Guy called out Kevin Spacey's behavior in a 2005 episode where Stewie runs naked through a shopping mall and someone says, "Somebody call the police." And another character responds, "I think Kevin Spacey already did. This was more than a decade before the Kevin Spacey scandal broke. How do the writers keep nailing these things?" It's like they have a crystal ball hidden in their writing room. The voice acting situation is absolutely bonkers when you really think about it. Seth MacFarlane voices Peter Griffin, Brian Griffin, Stewie Griffin, Glenn Quagmire, Tom Tucker, and Carter Pewterschmidt, among others. That means he's literally having conversations with himself for huge chunks of every episode. Imagine being in the recording booth talking to yourself as different characters for hours on end. It's like method acting taken to an extreme level. Alex Borstein, who voices Lois Griffin, also voices Trisha Takanawa and several other female characters. During the early seasons, she was actually a writer on Mad TV, which explains why some of the humor has that sketch comedy feel. The woman can switch between Lois's nasally Long Island accent and Trisha's professional news anchor voice seamlessly. Voice actors don't get nearly enough credit for their range. Here's a fact that will mess with your head. The show was actually canceled twice by Fox. The first cancellation happened in 2002 after just 3 seasons. But then something magical happened. Adult Swim started showing reruns, and DVD sales went through the roof. Fox realized they had made a massive mistake and brought the show back in 2005. Then they canceled it again in 2009, but fan outcry was so intense they reversed the decision within weeks. Family Guy is like a cockroach in the best possible way. It just refuses to die. The animation process is way more complicated than you might think. Each episode takes about 10 months to complete, from initial script to final animation. The overseas animation studios in South Korea handle most of the actual drawing, while the American team focuses on storyboarding and voice work. It's a global operation just to make Peter fall down the stairs in a funny way. Brian Griffin's character is loosely based on a real dog that Seth MacFarlane's family had when he was growing up. The real Brian was apparently much better behaved than his cartoon counterpart, though. He didn't drink martinis or write terrible novels or have existential crises about being a dog. The fictional Brian's pretentious intellectual personality came from Seth's observations of people he knew in college who took themselves way too seriously. The Conway Twitty Cutaway Gags started as an inside joke among the writers, but became this legendary running bit that fans either love or hate with no middle ground. These segments where the show just cuts to Conway Twitty performing a complete song were meant to be the most random non sequiturs possible. The fact that they kept doing it even when fans complained just made it funnier to the writers. It's comedy through pure stubbornness. Stewie Griffin's sexuality has been a topic of debate for years. Seth MacFarlane has given different answers in interviews ranging from Stewie being gay to being sexually fluid to being too young for any of it to matter. The ambiguity seems intentional. Stewie exists in this weird space where he's simultaneously a baby and this sophisticated character with adult concerns. It's like the writers are deliberately keeping us guessing. The show's relationship with censorship is fascinating. Standards and practices at Fox let certain things slide while being strict about others in ways that seem completely arbitrary. Characters can be violently injured in cartoonish ways, but heaven forbid someone says a particular word or shows too much animated skin. The writers have turned working around censorship into an art form. Cleveland's spin-off show, The Cleveland Show, ran for 4 seasons and was actually pretty decent, but never found the same audience as Family Guy. When Cleveland moved back to Quahog, it felt like a homecoming. Mike Henry, who voiced Cleveland, stepped down from the role in 2020, citing the need for black actors to voice black characters. The recasting brought Arif Zahir into the role, and honestly, the transition was seamless. The show's pop culture references are so dense you could teach entire courses on them. From obscure 1,980 seconds commercials to deep cuts from classic Hollywood movies, the writers assume their audience has an encyclopedic knowledge of American media history. Some references are so specific that you need to be a certain age and from a particular region to get them. It's like they're rewarding viewers for paying attention to decades of television and movies. Peter Griffin's job at the brewery is based on real brewery operations that Seth MacFarlane researched. The Pawtucket Patriot beer is obviously a parody of Samuel Adams, but the actual brewery dynamics and workplace situations are surprisingly accurate. Peter's incompetence is exaggerated for comedy, but apparently real brewery workers have told the writers that some of their workplace storylines hit uncomfortably close to home. The show's theme song is performed by Walter Murphy, who also composed music for Saturday Night Fever. Having a disco legend write your cartoon theme song is the kind of random collaboration that only happens in Hollywood. The orchestral arrangement gives the show this grand, cinematic feel that contrasts perfectly with the chaotic family dynamics. Meg Griffin is voiced by Mila Kunis, who was just 15 years old when she started the role. She's grown up with the character in a way that's pretty unique for voice acting. Lacey Chabert voiced Meg in the first season before scheduling conflicts forced her to step down. The transition happened so smoothly that most viewers didn't even notice the change. The show's animation style has evolved significantly over 20-plus seasons. Early episodes had this rougher hand-drawn quality, while newer episodes are much more polished and computer-assisted. You can literally watch the technology advance by comparing episodes from different eras. The character designs have become more standardized, but somehow less distinctive. Family Guy's influence on internet culture is immeasurable. Before YouTube compilation videos existed, fans were trading Family Guy clips on early file-sharing networks. The show basically invented the concept of animated content going viral. Cutaway gags are perfect for social media because they're self-contained comedy bits that work without context. The writer's room must be absolute chaos. How do you pitch ideas for a show where literally anything can happen? The creative process seems to involve taking normal family situations and pushing them to the most extreme possible conclusions. It's like improv comedy, but with months of animation work required to execute each joke. Seth MacFarlane's other projects, like The Orville and his music albums, show his range beyond comedy, but Family Guy remains his most recognizable creation. The show has become this cultural touchstone that defines a particular era of animated television. Love it or hate it, you can't ignore its impact. The merchandising empire around Family Guy is surprisingly extensive. From t-shirts featuring Stewie's quotes to Peter Griffin action figures, the show has spawned countless products. The fact that people want to wear clothing featuring cartoon characters making inappropriate jokes says something profound about modern comedy consumption. Here's something that will keep you thinking as you drift off to sleep. Family Guy exists in this weird space between family sitcom and surreal comedy experiment. It's simultaneously the most normal and most bizarre show on television. The Griffin family deals with everyday problems, like paying bills and getting along with neighbors. But they also travel through time, fight giant chickens, and have musical numbers about random topics. The show's longevity is a testament to something deeper than just comedy. It's comfort food for your brain. Even when the jokes don't land, there's something familiar and reassuring about Peter's voice or Stewie's elaborate schemes. It's like spending time with dysfunctional friends who make you feel better about your own problems. As you close your eyes tonight, maybe you'll dream about cutaway gags from your own life, or imagine what it would be like to have conversations with your pet, like Brian and the Griffin family. Or maybe you'll just sleep soundly, knowing that somewhere in the world, animators are working on the next episode where Peter does something incredibly stupid and somehow everything works out fine. Sweet dreams, and remember, we all have a little bit of Griffin family chaos in our lives. The difference is, their chaos gets turned into comedy gold, while ours just makes us tired. At least now you know some random Family Guy facts that are just weird enough to either bore you to sleep or keep you awake. Wondering what other secrets are hidden in your favorite animated shows?
Have you ever wondered what happens when celebrities get roasted so hard by Family Guy that they actually fight back? Tonight, we're diving into the wild world of bruised egos, angry tweets, and even courtroom drama. Some of these reactions will shock you, others might make you laugh, but all of them prove that not everyone can take a joke when Seth MacFarlane comes calling. Picture this. You're an Oscar-winning actor at the top of your game, and suddenly millions of people are watching an animated dog make fun of your nose. That's exactly what happened to Adrien Brody. And let me tell you, he did not find it amusing. During a murder mystery episode where characters are getting picked off one by one, Tom Tucker gets cornered by the other guests who think he's the killer. When they finally take him down, someone delivers this brutal line about casting Brody in a movie adaptation, basically saying nobody would want to watch it. But Family Guy wasn't finished with poor Adrien yet. They doubled down with another scene featuring Meg on a date watching a 3D movie. What's playing on screen? Adrien Brody doing shirtless sit-ups, and his famously prominent nose literally pokes out of the screen in full three-dimensional glory. It's the kind of visual gag that makes you cringe and laugh at the same time. So, how did the Academy Award winner handle being the butt of these jokes? Not gracefully. According to Seth MacFarlane himself, in interviews, Seth revealed that when he approached Brody at a Hollywood party to smooth things over, mentioning how much he enjoyed one of Brody's films, the actor made it crystal clear that there were definitely hard feelings. No amount of compliments about his work could undo the sting of those animated jabs. This brings us to our next celebrity casualty, and this one gets really messy because it involves politics and personal family matters. Sarah Palin found herself in Family Guy's crosshairs during an episode where Chris goes on a date with a girl who has Down syndrome. During their dinner conversation, the girl casually mentions her family background, specifically that her mother used to be the governor of Alaska. Now, unless there's another former Alaskan governor out there with a child named Ellen, this was clearly aimed at Sarah Palin and her family situation. The timing made this particularly sensitive because Palin's son, who has Down syndrome, was only 2 years old at the time. The Palin family's reaction was swift and fierce. Sarah took to social media calling Family Guy a pathetic cartoon and labeling the creators heartless jerks. But she didn't stop there. She appeared on television talk shows, describing the writers as cruel and cold-hearted people who had crossed a line by making jokes about the disabled community. Family Guy fired back through Seth MacFarlane, who pointed out something interesting during his own television appearance. The character making those comments was actually voiced by Andrea Friedman, an actress who herself has Down syndrome. This actress later clarified that she felt the joke was directed at Sarah Palin personally, not at people with disabilities, and she even suggested that Palin simply didn't have a sense of humor about the situation. But sometimes Family Guy doesn't even need to directly target someone to cause controversy. Chloe Grace Moretz learned this the hard way when she became collateral damage in an internet phenomenon. During an episode where Peter decides to lose weight so he can ride a roller coaster, he sets his sights on looking as good as a character called Legs Go All the Way Up Griffin. This character was basically a visual gag. All legs with no torso. The joke itself had nothing to do with Moretz, but someone online photoshopped her picture to match this character design, and the image went viral across social media platforms. While the internet found it hilarious, Moretz definitely didn't. She publicly stated that this manipulated image seriously affected her body image and self-confidence, causing her to retreat from public appearances for a while. The cruel irony is that Family Guy never even mentioned her name, but she still got caught in the crossfire of internet culture. Speaking of crossing lines, Family Guy once ventured into territory so sensitive that it sparked outrage from disability advocates, religious groups, and grieving family members alike. They decided to create a school play episode featuring Terry Schiavo, the woman who became the center of one of America's most heartbreaking right-to-die legal battles. In typical Family Guy fashion, they turned this tragic real-life situation into a musical number performed by preschoolers. The kids sang cheerful songs with lyrics comparing Schiavo to an expensive plant that should just be unplugged. Even within the show, Brian questioned whether it was too soon for such material. But that didn't stop the episode from airing. The backlash was immediate and intense. Terry's own brother, Bobby Schindler Jr., was so furious about what he saw as insensitive treatment of his family's tragedy that he actually called for Fox to cancel Family Guy entirely. Religious groups and disability advocates joined the chorus of criticism, arguing that some subjects should be off-limits, even for satirical comedy. Now, getting roasted by Family Guy hits different when you're a comedian yourself. Rachel Bloom, creator and star of Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, discovered this firsthand during an episode where Brian impulsively marries a woman with cancer. The storyline gets complicated when the woman's cancer goes into remission, leaving Brian stuck in a marriage he never really wanted. To make matters worse for Brian, his new wife gains weight, develops some unpleasant habits, and constantly gushes about her favorite television show. That's where Family Guy took their shot at Bloom's creation, having the character describe Crazy Ex-Girlfriend in dismissive terms, focusing on a musical number about menstruation, and suggesting that watching such shows makes someone unattractive and unlikable. Bloom's reaction was more nuanced than outright fury, but she definitely wasn't laughing. She pointed out that the scene reeked of male condescension, essentially equating appreciation for her show with being an undesirable woman. While she didn't launch a full-scale public campaign against Family Guy, her response made it clear that she felt the jab was rooted in sexist assumptions about female-created content. Sometimes, though, celebrities handle Family Guy roasts with unexpected maturity. Dax Shepard found himself on the receiving end of a quick but cutting intelligence joke during an episode where Brian discovers he has a brain tumor. When the family learns the tumor is benign and debates whether Brian should have surgery, someone quips about whether Dax Shepard turned out all right, clearly questioning his intelligence. Rather than ranting on social media or giving angry interviews, Shepard took a different approach. He brought up the joke directly with Seth MacFarlane during an appearance on his own podcast. He acknowledged that he understood the writers weren't trying to be malicious and recognized the nuanced nature of comedy, but he was honest about the fact that it still stung a little. This mature, direct conversation probably earned him more respect than any angry response could have. One of the most interesting cases involves James Woods, who went from being Family Guy's most willing participant to eventually walking away from the show entirely. For years, Woods not only tolerated being parodied but actively participated, voicing an exaggerated version of himself in multiple episodes. He played up his persona as a chaotic, scheming character who would steal identities, fake his own death, and constantly torment the Griffin family. Woods initially embraced the self-parody, even refusing payment because he genuinely enjoyed making fun of himself. This collaboration worked brilliantly for both parties, giving Family Guy a celebrity who was game for anything while allowing Woods to show his sense of humor. But by 2018, something changed. Woods became more politically vocal on social media, and when Family Guy offered him another episode, he turned it down. He tweeted that he felt the new material was too politically biased, and worse than being offensive, it simply wasn't funny anymore. He accused the show of becoming mean-spirited rather than genuinely comedic. After that public criticism, Woods disappeared from Family Guy entirely, marking the end of one of their most successful celebrity partnerships. The most extreme legal response came from Carol Burnett, who decided that if Family Guy was going to use her intellectual property, she was going to make them pay for it literally. The controversy stemmed from a brief scene where Quagmire visits an adult bookstore, and viewers catch a glimpse of Burnett's iconic charwoman character from her classic sketch show working as a janitor. The appearance lasted maybe 2 seconds and seemed relatively harmless by Family Guy standards, but Burnett saw it as a serious violation of her rights. She filed a lawsuit against Fox, claiming copyright infringement and misuse of her character without permission. She wasn't seeking a small settlement either. Reports indicated she wanted somewhere between $2 and $6 million in damages. The legal system didn't side with Burnett, however. Judge Dean Pregerson dismissed the case, ruling that Family Guy was protected under First Amendment parody provisions. Interestingly, though, the judge did note that while the show was legally protected, he found the scene distasteful and offensive to Burnett personally. So while she didn't win any money, she did get judicial acknowledgement that her feelings were valid. These reactions reveal something fascinating about celebrity culture and comedy boundaries. Some stars, like Dax Shepard and initially James Woods, showed they could laugh at themselves and engage constructively with satirical content. Others, like Adrian Brody and Sarah Palin, felt genuinely hurt and responded with public criticism. Still, others like Carol Burnett saw legal violations that needed addressing through the court system. What makes Family Guy's celebrity controversies particularly interesting is how they reflect broader conversations about comedy, free speech, and personal dignity in the digital age. When a show has millions of viewers and endless social media amplification, even a brief joke can follow someone around for years. The internet's ability to turn a 2-second gag into a viral meme, as happened with Chloe Grace Moretz, demonstrates how modern comedy can have unintended consequences. The show's approach to sensitive topics like disability, terminal illness, and personal tragedy also raises questions about whether any subject should be off-limits for satirical treatment. The Terry Schiavo episode particularly highlighted this tension, with critics arguing that some real-life situations are too painful and recent for comedic treatment, while others defend the right to satirize any public figure or event. From a psychological perspective, these celebrity reactions also reveal how public figures cope with being reduced to punchlines. Adrian Brody's continued resentment suggests that some people never fully recover from being mocked on such a large scale, especially when the jokes focus on physical characteristics they cannot change. Sarah Palin's fierce defense of her family shows how comedy can become deeply personal when it touches on sensitive family matters. The gender dynamics in some of these controversies are also worth examining. Rachel Bloom's observation about male condescension in comedy writing reflects broader conversations about how female creators and their work get treated in predominantly male-dominated comedy spaces. Her measured but critical response showed how women in entertainment often have to balance standing up for themselves while avoiding being labeled as humorless or overly sensitive. James Woods' evolution from enthusiastic participant to critic illustrates how political polarization can affect entertainment relationships. His willingness to mock himself disappeared when he felt the show's political perspective diverged too far from his own beliefs, suggesting that even self-deprecating humor has limits when it conflicts with personal values. The legal aspects, particularly Carol Burnett's lawsuit, highlight the complex intersection between parody rights and intellectual property protection. While courts generally protect satirical content under free speech provisions, celebrities still have legitimate concerns about how their likenesses and creations get used without permission, especially in commercial contexts. These stories also demonstrate the power dynamics between individual celebrities and large entertainment corporations. When Family Guy makes a joke, it has the backing of major networks and widespread distribution, while individual celebrities often have limited recourse beyond public statements or legal action. This imbalance can make satirical attacks feel particularly unfair to those being targeted. The Internet's role in amplifying these controversies cannot be overlooked. Social media platforms allow both celebrities to respond directly to perceived slights and fans to create additional content that extends the original jokes in unexpected directions. Chloe Grace Moretz's experience shows how online communities can take a television gag and transform it into something more personally damaging than the original creators intended. Looking at the long-term impact of these controversies, it's clear that some celebrities never fully recover their relationship with Family Guy or its fan base. Adrian Brody's continued resentment years later suggests that animated mockery can create lasting professional and personal damage. Other celebrities like Dax Shepard seem to have moved on more successfully by addressing the situation directly and maturely. The varying reactions also reflect different approaches to celebrity image management in the digital age. Some stars try to ignore satirical attacks, hoping they'll fade away naturally. Others engage directly, either through humor or criticism. Still others pursue legal remedies when they feel their rights have been violated. None of these approaches seems universally successful, suggesting that there's no perfect way to handle being satirized by popular media. These celebrity feuds with Family Guy ultimately reveal the complex relationship between comedy, fame, and personal dignity in contemporary entertainment. While satirical shows claim the right to mock public figures, those figures retain the right to respond, criticize, and seek legal remedies when they feel boundaries have been crossed. The ongoing debates about these controversies suggest that society is still figuring out the appropriate balance between comedic freedom and personal respect. As entertainment becomes more personalized and social media makes everyone more accessible, these questions will likely become even more complicated. Whether you think these celebrities were justified in their reactions or believe they should have just laughed it off, one thing is clear. Family Guy's willingness to target anyone and everyone has created a fascinating collection of bruised egos and public feuds that continues to spark conversation about the limits and responsibilities of satirical comedy. Want to dive deeper into Family Guy controversies and see why so many people are calling for the show to be canceled entirely? Check out our next video exploring the growing backlash against the series and whether all this controversy is finally catching up with Seth MacFarlane's creation. Think you know everything about your favorite fictional families? Tonight, I'm about to shatter everything you thought you knew about the characters we grew up watching. What if I told you that beneath the laughs and heartwarming moments, these beloved family shows have been hiding some seriously dark psychological truths? Get ready, because we're diving deep into the twisted minds of television's most iconic families, and trust me, you'll never look at them the same way again. Welcome back to another mind-bending exploration, where we peel back the layers of pop culture to reveal the uncomfortable realities lurking beneath the surface. I'm your host, and today we're embarking on a journey that will fundamentally change how you view family dynamics on screen. We're not just talking about quirky character traits or funny running gags here. We're exposing genuine psychological disorders, toxic behaviors, and dysfunctional patterns that would make any therapist's notebook overflow with red flags. Have you ever wondered why certain family sitcoms feel so uncomfortably familiar? Why we laugh at situations that, in real life, would have us calling social services? That's because these shows, intentionally or not, mirror the darkest aspects of human psychology wrapped in a comedic package. Tonight, we are unwrapping that package and examining what's really inside. Let's start with something that might shock you about animated families. You know those characters we quote daily and consider harmless entertainment? Well, they're actually perfect case studies for some of the most destructive personality traits known to psychology. Take the concept of narcissistic behavior patterns, for instance. We see characters who consistently put their own desires above family welfare, manipulate situations to benefit themselves, and show zero empathy for others' suffering. Consider how often we witness parents in these shows making decisions that directly harm their children's emotional development. They dismiss their kids' feelings, mock their aspirations, and create environments where psychological safety doesn't exist. Yet we laugh because it's presented as comedy. The truth is, if these behaviors occurred in real families, we'd recognize them as forms of emotional abuse. But the darkness goes deeper than individual character flaws. These shows often normalize dysfunction by presenting it as typical family life. Children viewers internalize these relationship patterns as normal, potentially carrying these toxic blueprints into their own future families. It's a cycle that perpetuates unhealthy dynamics across generations, all disguised as entertainment. Let's examine the phenomenon of scapegoating within fictional families. There's almost always that one family member who bears the brunt of everyone else's dysfunction. They become the emotional dumping ground, the target of ridicule, and the convenient explanation for all family problems. This character serves as the family's pressure valve, allowing other members to avoid confronting their own issues by projecting everything onto this unfortunate soul. What's particularly disturbing is how these scapegoated characters are often portrayed as deserving their treatment. The show's narrative subtly suggests that their suffering is justified, teaching audiences that certain people are acceptable targets for cruelty. This psychological manipulation is incredibly sophisticated and deeply harmful, especially when absorbed by impressionable viewers. Moving on to another dark pattern, we see frequent examples of emotional manipulation disguised as parental love. Characters use guilt, shame, and conditional affection to control family members' behavior. They withdraw love as punishment and offer it as reward, creating anxious attachment patterns that would haunt real children for life. The scary part is how these manipulation tactics are often presented as caring parental behavior. Financial dynamics in these fictional families also reveal disturbing truths about power and control. Money becomes a weapon used to maintain dominance hierarchies within the family unit. Characters leverage financial dependency to strip away others' autonomy, creating situations where family members must choose between self-respect and survival. This economic abuse rarely gets labeled as such within the show's context, but it's a form of domestic violence nonetheless. Then there's the normalization of substance abuse as a coping mechanism for family stress. Characters regularly turn to alcohol or other substances to deal with their dysfunctional relationships, and this behavior is consistently portrayed as acceptable or even admirable. The message sent is that chemical numbing is preferable to addressing underlying problems, a philosophy that has destroyed countless real families. The violence, both physical and emotional, that permeates these shows is staggering when you really analyze it. Characters assault each other, destroy property in fits of rage, and engage in psychological warfare that would traumatize actual family members. Yet because it's animated or comedic, we're conditioned to view this violence as harmless fun rather than recognizing it as abusive behavior that mirrors real-world domestic violence patterns. What about the complete absence of healthy conflict resolution in these families? Disagreements escalate to explosive confrontations, problems get swept under the rug rather than addressed, and family members hold grudges that span entire seasons. There's never any genuine communication, compromise, or emotional growth. Instead, conflicts either explode into chaos or get ignored until they fester into something worse. The gender dynamics in these shows often perpetuate harmful stereotypes that reinforce toxic relationship patterns. Male characters are frequently portrayed as bumbling, emotionally unavailable, and incapable of basic actions. Adulting skills. Female characters often become long-suffering martyrs who enable bad behavior while sacrificing their own needs. These portrayals normalize codependency and emotional labor imbalances that plague real relationships. Let's talk about the children in these fictional families, because their treatment is perhaps the most disturbing aspect of all. They're often parentified, forced to take on adult responsibilities while their actual parents remain childlike. They become emotional caretakers for dysfunctional adults, a role reversal that stunts their development and robs them of childhood innocence. The shows present this as maturity or responsibility, but it's actually a form of childhood emotional abuse. The sibling dynamics portrayed are equally problematic, characterized by intense competition, jealousy, and cruelty. Siblings are pitted against each other for parental attention and approval, creating lifelong rivalries rather than supportive bonds. The message conveyed is that family members are competitors rather than allies, fostering an environment where trust and cooperation become impossible. Privacy and personal boundaries are consistently violated in these fictional families. Characters rifle through each other's belongings, eavesdrop on private conversations, and invade personal space without consequence. This normalized boundary violation teaches viewers that family members don't deserve privacy or respect, setting up expectations that healthy relationships cannot meet. The way mental health issues are handled in these shows is particularly troubling. Characters displaying clear signs of depression, anxiety, or other psychological conditions are mocked rather than supported. Their struggles become punchlines rather than opportunities for compassion and understanding. This portrayal stigmatizes mental health challenges and discourages seeking help. Perhaps most disturbing is how these shows handle consequences for toxic behavior. Characters rarely face meaningful repercussions for their harmful actions. They might receive temporary comeuppance, but by the next episode, they're back to their destructive patterns without any real change or growth. This lack of consequences suggests that toxic behavior is acceptable as long as you're family. The enablement that occurs within these family systems is staggering. Instead of holding destructive family members accountable, other characters make excuses, cover up problems, and adapt their own behavior to accommodate dysfunction. This teaches viewers that enabling is loving, and that challenging toxic behavior is disloyal, perspectives that trap people in abusive relationships. Financial irresponsibility is often glorified in these shows, with characters making impulsive decisions that endanger their family's security. Yet there are rarely long-term consequences for these choices, sending the message that financial stability is unimportant and that someone else will always clean up the mess. This attitude contributes to cycles of poverty and instability in real families. The constant chaos and unpredictability in these fictional homes would be traumatic for real children. There's no stability, security, or peace. Instead, children live in environments where they never know what crisis will erupt next, what mood their parents will be in, or whether their basic needs will be met. This chronic stress would cause lasting developmental damage in reality. What's particularly insidious is how these shows use humor to make abuse palatable. When terrible behavior is packaged as comedy, our psychological defenses are lowered. We laugh at situations that should horrify us, gradually becoming desensitized to toxicity. This comedic reframing is a powerful tool that makes dysfunction seem normal and acceptable. The isolation these fictional families experience from healthy outside relationships is another red flag. They rarely maintain friendships or connections with functional people who might challenge their toxic patterns. This isolation prevents reality testing and allows dysfunction to flourish unchecked, much like how abusive relationships cut victims off from support systems. The power dynamics within these families are often rigidly hierarchical and authoritarian rather than collaborative and democratic. Decisions are made by whoever has the most power, regardless of how those decisions affect other family members. This teaches children that relationships are about dominance and submission, rather than mutual respect and partnership. Educational neglect is rampant in these fictional families, with parents showing little interest in their children's learning or development. Academic achievement is either ignored or mocked. Extracurricular activities are dismissed as unimportant, and intellectual curiosity is discouraged. This attitude toward education perpetuates cycles of underachievement and limits children's future opportunities. The way these shows handle emotions is deeply problematic. Genuine feelings are ridiculed, emotional expression is punished, and vulnerability is treated as weakness. Family members learn to suppress their authentic selves to survive, creating fake personas while their true needs go unmet. This emotional suppression leads to profound psychological damage over time. Perhaps most tragically, these fictional families never model what healthy relationships actually look like. Viewers, especially children, don't see examples of mutual respect, effective communication, genuine affection, or supportive problem-solving. Without these positive models, they lack blueprints for creating healthier relationships in their own lives. The normalization of chaos as family life is perhaps the most damaging message these shows convey. They suggest that dysfunction is inevitable, that all families are messed up, and that toxic behavior is just part of human nature. This fatalistic view prevents people from recognizing that healthy families do exist and that change is possible with effort and commitment. As we wrap up this disturbing journey through the psychology of fictional families, I want you to consider how these portrayals might have influenced your own expectations about family life. Have you normalized behaviors in your own relationships that you wouldn't accept from strangers? Have you laughed off red flags that deserved serious attention? Have you repeated patterns you learned from these shows without questioning their healthiness? The power of media to shape our understanding of normal is immense, and these family shows wield that power irresponsibly. They present dysfunction as entertainment while failing to acknowledge the real pain such behaviors cause in actual families. By recognizing these patterns, we can begin to break free from toxic blueprints and create healthier relationships. Remember, just because something is common doesn't make it healthy. And just because something makes us laugh doesn't mean it's harmless. Real families deserve better than the chaos and cruelty we've been taught to accept as normal. You deserve better. Your future family deserves better. If this analysis has opened your eyes to patterns in your own life, consider seeking support from mental health professionals who can help you develop healthier relationship skills. Remember that recognizing dysfunction is the first step toward healing, and that breaking cycles of toxicity is one of the most loving things you can do for yourself and future generations. What did you think of this deep dive into the dark psychology of fictional families? Did any of these patterns surprise you? Or did they confirm suspicions you already had? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more content that challenges the narratives we've been fed. Until next time, stay curious, stay critical, and most importantly, stay committed to creating healthier relationships than the ones we see on screen. Welcome back, night owls and daydreamers. Tonight we're diving deep into the chaotic world of Quahog with some fascinating Family Guy facts that'll have you drifting off to sleep with a smile. Whether you're a longtime fan or just discovering the Griffin family madness, these relaxing tidbits about one of animation's most controversial shows will guide you gently into dreamland. Let's start our journey back to 1999, when Family Guy first graced television screens. The show almost never happened at all. Creator Seth MacFarlane was working as a writer and animator for Hanna-Barbera when he created two animated shorts called The Life of Larry and Larry and Steve. These featured a man and his talking dog, which would eventually evolve into Peter and Brian Griffin. Fox executives were so impressed with MacFarlane's work that they gave him an unprecedented deal for someone so young, making him the youngest person ever to create a primetime series for the network at just 24 years old. The original pilot episode had a much smaller budget than later episodes, which is why the animation looks noticeably different. The Griffin house interior was actually based on the house from another famous animated family, but with some creative liberties taken. MacFarlane has mentioned that he wanted the show to feel lived in and realistic, despite all the absurd situations the family would find themselves in. Speaking of the Griffin family, each character was carefully designed to represent different aspects of the American family dynamic. Peter Griffin, the bumbling patriarch, was inspired by MacFarlane's own father and various blue-collar workers he'd observed growing up in Connecticut. His distinctive laugh wasn't originally planned. It just happened naturally during recording sessions, and the creators decided to keep it because it felt so authentic to the character. Lois Griffin underwent several design changes before settling on her final appearance. Originally, she was going to have a completely different personality. more stern and less patient with her family's antics. The writers quickly realized that having someone slightly more grounded would make the show's more outrageous moments feel more believable. Her background as a wealthy heiress was added later to explain how the family could afford their lifestyle despite Peter's various job changes and general incompetence. The character of Meg started out very differently than how fans know her today. In the early seasons, she was treated more like a regular teenage daughter dealing with typical adolescent problems. The running joke of the entire family treating her terribly wasn't established until later seasons. This shift reflected the show's overall evolution toward more extreme and absurd humor over time. Griffin was originally going to be the smart one in the family, but the writers felt this would create too much overlap with Brian's role as the voice of reason. Instead, they made him dim-witted but good-hearted, which created better comedic opportunities and family dynamics. His voice actor actually had to learn to make his voice crack consistently to maintain the character's adolescent sound as the show progressed through multiple seasons. Stewie Griffin is perhaps the most complex character in terms of development. His evil, genius baby persona was inspired by various movie villains, but his sophisticated vocabulary and adult concerns created an interesting contradiction that the writers loved exploring. The ambiguity around his sexual orientation was intentional from early on, with McFarlane wanting to create a character that defied easy categorization. The family dog Brian started as a relatively simple character, but evolved into something much more complex. He was meant to be the straight man to the family's chaos, offering occasional wisdom and commentary. His human-like behavior was the central joke, a dog who acted more civilized than his human family members. The character served as McFarlane's voice in many episodes, expressing his own political views and social commentary through Brian's dialogue and actions. Family Guy's animation style was heavily influenced by classic cartoons, but with modern sensibilities. The character designs were kept relatively simple to allow for faster animation production, but the backgrounds were often incredibly detailed. The color palette was specifically chosen to feel warm and inviting, like a real family home, which contrasted nicely with the show's often chaotic storylines. The show's famous cutaway gags weren't originally planned as a major feature. They started as occasional diversions but became more frequent when the writers realized how much creative freedom they provided. These sequences allowed the show to explore completely unrelated scenarios and parody different time periods, movies, and cultural phenomena without being constrained by the main plot. One of the most interesting aspects of Family Guy's production is how much the voice actors contribute to their characters' development. Many of the show's funniest moments came from improvisation during recording sessions. The actors would often suggest alternative line readings or add physical comedy that would then be animated to match their performance. The show's musical numbers weren't part of the original concept, but became increasingly important as the series progressed. McFarlane's background in musical theater and his love of classic show tunes influenced many of these sequences. The elaborate production numbers often required months of preparation and coordination between the animation, music, and voice departments. Family Guy's relationship with censorship has been complicated throughout its run. The show has pushed boundaries since its inception, but network standards have evolved over the years. Many episodes have alternate versions with different jokes or sequences depending on when and where they're broadcast. This has created an interesting archive of content that varies significantly across different platforms and time periods. The series has featured an incredible array of celebrity guest stars over the years, many of whom were fans of the show before appearing on it. Some celebrities have become recurring characters, while others made single appearances that became memorable moments for fans. The show's writers often write specific roles with particular actors in mind, creating unique opportunities for both established and emerging performers. Behind the scenes, Family Guy's production schedule is incredibly demanding. Each episode takes months to complete, from initial script to final animation. The process involves dozens of artists, writers, and technicians working in coordination. Despite this complexity, the show has maintained a remarkably consistent output for over 2 decades. The show's impact on popular culture extends far beyond television. Family Guy references and quotes have become part of everyday conversation for many fans. The show's influence can be seen in countless other animated series that followed, many of which adopted similar humor styles and narrative structures. Family Guy's cancellation and subsequent revival is one of television's most interesting stories. After being canceled twice, the show found new life through DVD sales and reruns on cable networks. This proved that there was still a significant audience for the show's particular brand of humor, leading to its eventual return to primetime television. The evolution of animation technology has dramatically changed how Family Guy is produced. Early seasons required hand-drawn animation cells, while modern episodes are created entirely digitally. This technological shift has allowed for more complex visual effects and faster production times, but some fans prefer the slightly rougher aesthetic of the earlier seasons. Family Guy's international success has led to numerous international versions and adaptations. Different countries have created their own versions of the show with local characters and cultural references. These adaptations provide fascinating insights into how humor translates across different cultures and societies. The show's merchandise empire extends into virtually every category imaginable. From clothing and toys to video games and books, Family Guy has become a brand unto itself. This commercial success has helped fund the show's continued production and allowed for increasingly ambitious episodes and special events. Family Guy's writing process involves a large team of contributors working collaboratively. Story ideas can come from anywhere, and the show's writer's room is known for its freewheeling creative atmosphere. Many of the show's most memorable episodes began as simple throwaway comments that evolved into full storylines through group brainstorming sessions. The show's holiday episodes have become annual traditions for many families. These special episodes often feature elaborate musical numbers and heartwarming moments that contrast with the show's typically irreverent tone. The Christmas episodes in particular have become comfort viewing for many fans during the holiday season. Family Guy's relationship with social media has evolved significantly over the years. The show's official accounts regularly share behind-the-scenes content, and the writers often interact directly with fans online. This direct connection between creators and audience has influenced how episodes are developed and promoted. The series has tackled numerous social and political issues throughout its run, often generating significant discussion and sometimes controversy. These episodes demonstrate the show's willingness to engage with serious topics while maintaining its comedic perspective. The balance between entertainment and commentary has been a defining characteristic of the series. Family Guy's sound design is incredibly detailed, with each episode featuring hundreds of individual sound effects and musical cues. The show's audio team works closely with the animation department to ensure that every visual gag is supported by appropriate sound. This attention to audio detail helps create the show's distinctive atmosphere. The series has spawned several spin-offs and related projects over the years. These additional shows have allowed the creators to explore different aspects of the Family Guy universe and experiment with new storytelling approaches. Some have been more successful than others, but all have contributed to the overall Family Guy mythology. Family Guy's influence on comedy writing can be seen in numerous other television shows and movies. The show's particular style of rapid-fire jokes and pop culture references has become a template that many other creators have adapted and modified for their own projects. The show's live performances and special events have created unique opportunities for fans to experience Family Guy in different contexts. These events often feature the voice actors performing in character and provide insights into the creative process that aren't available through the regular episodes. Family Guy's educational impact, while perhaps unintentional, has been significant. Many viewers have discovered new music, learned historical facts, or been introduced to classic movies through the show's references and parodies. This accidental educational component has made the show valuable beyond pure entertainment. The series has maintained its relevance across multiple generations of viewers. Parents who watched the show when it first aired now watch it with their own children, creating shared cultural experiences that span decades. This intergenerational appeal has helped ensure the show's continued success. Family Guy's production team includes numerous talented artists who have gone on to create their own successful projects. The show has served as a training ground for many animators, writers, and voice actors, who have used their experience to launch their own careers in entertainment. The show's approach to continuity is deliberately loose, allowing for creative freedom while occasionally referencing past events. This flexible approach to storytelling has enabled the writers to explore virtually any scenario without being constrained by previous episodes. Family Guy's relationship with its fan community is uniquely interactive. The show's creators regularly acknowledge fan theories and suggestions, sometimes incorporating them into actual episodes. This collaborative relationship between creators and audience has helped maintain the show's popularity over many years. As we drift towards sleep tonight, remember that Family Guy represents more than just animated comedy. It's a cultural phenomenon that has brought laughter to millions of viewers worldwide. The show's ability to evolve while maintaining its core identity demonstrates the power of creative persistence and the importance of connecting with audiences on multiple levels. Sweet dreams, and may your rest be filled with the gentle chaos of Quahog, where anything is possible and laughter is always just around the corner. The Griffin family will be there waiting when you wake up, ready with new adventures and timeless humor that continues to entertain after all these years. Picture this. It's 2 a.m. You're exhausted but somehow still scrolling through YouTube. And suddenly you stumble across a Family Guy compilation that's supposed to help you sleep. Sounds weird, right? Well, you're not alone. Millions of people have discovered that this chaotic animated sitcom has become the ultimate sleep aid. And today we're diving deep into the fascinating world of Family Guy sleep culture and uncovering some mind-blowing facts that'll change how you think about this phenomenon forever. Before we get started, let me ask you something. Have you ever found yourself drifting off to the sounds of Peter Griffin's ridiculous antics? If so, you're part of a massive community that's turned what was meant to be comedy gold into the perfect bedtime soundtrack. And trust me, by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why this works so well and discover some incredible secrets about the show that even die-hard fans don't know. Let's start with the most surprising fact of all. Family Guy wasn't designed to be relaxing, yet it's become one of the most popular sleep aids on the internet. The reason behind this paradox is actually rooted in psychology. Our brains crave familiar patterns when we're trying to wind down. And after more than 2 decades on air, Family Guy has created a predictable rhythm that viewers find comforting. The show's structure follows a specific formula that makes it perfect for background noise. Each episode contains multiple short segments, cutaway gags that last just long enough to capture attention without requiring deep focus, and character voices that remain consistent throughout. This creates what sleep experts call a cognitive lullaby, where your brain can partially engage without becoming overstimulated. But here's where it gets really interesting. The show's creator, Seth MacFarlane, has actually acknowledged this unexpected use of his creation. In interviews, he's mentioned receiving countless messages from fans who use Family Guy episodes to fall asleep. What's fascinating is that this wasn't intentional, but it happened because of specific audio design choices made during production. The audio mixing in Family Guy is deliberately compressed, meaning the difference between the loudest and quietest sounds is minimized. This prevents jarring volume spikes that might wake you up. Unlike many other TV shows where dramatic music or sound effects can suddenly blast through your speakers, the voice acting also maintains a relatively steady pitch and tone, creating a consistent audio environment that's conducive to relaxation. Now let's talk about the science behind why repetitive content helps us sleep. When we watch the same episodes repeatedly, our brains start to predict what's coming next. This predictability reduces anxiety and mental stimulation, allowing our minds to gradually wind down. Family Guy episodes are structured in a way that supports this process, with familiar character, dynamics, and recurring gags that create a sense of security. The phenomenon has grown so large that entire YouTube channels are dedicated to Family Guy sleep compilations. These videos regularly rack up millions of views, with comment sections filled with people sharing their gratitude for finding the perfect sleep content. Some compilations run for 10, 12, even 15 hours, specifically designed to play throughout the entire night without interruption. What makes this even more remarkable is the demographic involved. While Family Guy's primary audience skews toward adults aged 18 to 49, the sleep community spans all age groups. Parents report using these compilations to help their children fall asleep, while elderly viewers have discovered that familiar voices and simple storylines provide comfort during restless nights. The cultural impact of this trend extends beyond just sleep habits. It's created a shared experience among viewers who might never meet but who all understand the comfort of falling asleep to Peter Griffin's voice. Social media groups dedicated to Family Guy sleep content have thousands of members who share their favorite episodes, discuss which seasons work best for sleeping, and even create custom playlists for different moods. But let's dive deeper into what makes Family Guy specifically effective compared to other animated shows. The key lies in its character consistency and emotional tone. Unlike shows with dramatic story arcs or intense emotional moments, Family Guy maintains a relatively flat emotional landscape. Even when conflicts arise, they're typically resolved quickly and without lasting consequences, preventing the kind of narrative tension that might keep your mind active. The show's humor style also plays a crucial role. The comedy is largely observational and referential, rather than building toward major punchlines that require your full attention. This allows viewers to drift in and out of consciousness without feeling like they're missing important plot points or set-up payoff sequences that other comedies rely on. Character voice consistency is another crucial factor. Seth MacFarlane voices multiple main characters, including Peter, Brian, and Stewie, creating a unified vocal landscape. His voice acting style maintains consistent energy levels and delivery patterns across different characters, contributing to the overall audio stability that makes the show suitable for sleep. The animation style itself supports the sleep-friendly nature of the content. Family Guy uses bright, primary colors and simple character designs that don't create visual complexity or overstimulation. The backgrounds are typically static, and camera movements are minimal compared to more action-oriented animated series. This visual simplicity prevents the kind of dynamic imagery that might keep viewers visually engaged when they're trying to relax. Research into sleep and media consumption has revealed some fascinating insights about why certain content works better than others for bedtime viewing. Studies show that familiar content reduces cortisol levels, the stress hormone that keeps us alert and awake. When we watch something we've seen before, our brains don't need to work as hard to process new information, allowing other systems to begin the shutdown process necessary for sleep. The episodic nature of Family Guy also supports healthy sleep habits. Unlike serialized dramas that create cliffhangers and emotional investment in ongoing storylines, Family Guy episodes are largely self-contained. This means viewers don't feel compelled to stay awake to find out what happens next, reducing the kind of narrative anxiety that can interfere with sleep onset. Temperature regulation during sleep is crucial, and surprisingly, the content we consume before bed can affect our body's ability to cool down. Family Guy's predictable pacing and familiar content help maintain steady heart rate and breathing patterns, supporting the natural temperature drop that signals our bodies it's time to sleep. The show's approach to conflict resolution also contributes to its sleep-friendly qualities. Most episodes follow a pattern where problems are introduced and resolved within 22 minutes, creating a sense of completion and closure that helps viewers feel satisfied and ready to rest. This is dramatically different from shows that end episodes with unresolved tension or dramatic cliffhangers. Cultural references and pop culture jokes in Family Guy serve an interesting function for sleep viewers. Because many of these references are repeated across multiple episodes and seasons, they create layers of familiarity that deepen over time. Longtime viewers develop an almost subliminal recognition of these patterns, further enhancing the comfort and predictability that supports sleep. The timing of cutaway gags is another element that works in favor of sleep viewers. These brief tangential scenes typically last between 10 to 30 seconds, providing just enough variety to prevent complete monotony while maintaining the overall flow of familiar content. They're short enough that viewers who drift off won't miss significant plot development, but engaging enough to provide gentle mental stimulation for those still partially awake. Voice acting quality and consistency across the series is remarkable when you consider that Family Guy has been in production for over 20 years. The main voice actors have maintained their character voices with impressive consistency, creating an audio signature that remains recognizable and comforting across different seasons and episodes. This vocal stability is crucial for sleep content, as changes in voice quality or delivery style could be jarring enough to wake viewers. The show's musical approach also supports its effectiveness as sleep content. The background music is typically understated and doesn't compete with dialogue for attention. Musical cues are predictable and rarely feature sudden volume changes or jarring instrumental choices that might disrupt the relaxation process. Even the show's musical numbers, while entertaining, follow familiar structures that don't create unexpected audio experiences. Character development in Family Guy follows patterns that support its use as sleep content. Unlike shows where characters undergo significant growth or change, Family Guy characters remain relatively static in their personalities and behaviors. This consistency means viewers always know what to expect from each character, reducing the cognitive load required to follow character arcs or relationship developments. The pacing of dialogue delivery is another crucial element. Family Guy conversations typically maintain steady rhythms, without the rapid-fire exchanges or dramatic pauses that characterize other comedy series. This consistent pacing helps maintain the audio environment that many viewers find conducive to sleep, providing gentle stimulation without sudden changes that might increase alertness. Production quality across different seasons has remained remarkably consistent, which is important for viewers who cycle through multiple episodes during sleep sessions. While animation techniques have evolved over the years, the core audio elements that make Family Guy effective for sleep have remained stable throughout the series' run. The global appeal of Family Guy as sleep content transcends cultural boundaries. International viewers report similar experiences with the show's sleep-inducing properties, even when watching dubbed versions in their native languages. This suggests that the fundamental structural elements that make the show effective for sleep are independent of specific cultural references or language-based humor. Streaming platform algorithms have recognized this usage pattern and now actively recommend Family Guy content to viewers who consume other sleep-related media. This has created a feedback loop, where the show's sleep community continues to grow as more people discover its effectiveness through algorithmic suggestions. The economic impact of this trend is substantial. Streaming services have reported that Family Guy episodes generate billions of hours of viewing time, with a significant portion of that consumption happening during typical sleep hours. This has influenced licensing decisions and content acquisition strategies across multiple platforms. Medical professionals have begun studying the Family Guy sleep phenomenon as part of broader research into media-assisted sleep techniques. While not officially prescribed as a sleep aid, some sleep specialists acknowledge that for certain individuals, familiar comedic content can be part of a healthy bedtime routine when used appropriately. The community aspect of Family Guy sleep culture has created unique social connections. Online forums feature discussions about optimal episode selections, volume levels, and viewing setups specifically designed for sleep use. These communities provide support and advice for people struggling with insomnia or other sleep difficulties. Production decisions made decades ago continue to influence the show's effectiveness as sleep content today. Early episodes featured simpler audio mixing and more straightforward storylines that many sleep viewers prefer. This has led to interesting discussions about which seasons and episodes work best for different types of sleep needs. The psychological comfort provided by Family Guy's dysfunctional but ultimately loving family dynamic resonates with viewers seeking emotional stability before sleep. Despite the characters' many flaws and conflicts, the show consistently reinforces themes of family loyalty and unconditional acceptance that can provide emotional security during vulnerable sleep periods. As we wrap up this exploration of Family Guy's unexpected role as the internet's favorite sleep aid, it's clear that this phenomenon represents something much larger than just a quirky viewing habit. It demonstrates how content creators can accidentally tap into deep psychological needs, how communities form around shared experiences, and how familiar media can provide comfort in our increasingly chaotic world. Whether you're a longtime member of the Family Guy sleep community or someone who's never considered using animated sitcoms as a relaxation tool, this trend offers fascinating insights into human psychology, media consumption, and the unexpected ways we find peace in our daily lives. The next time you're struggling to fall asleep, you might want to give those Family Guy compilations a try. You'll be joining millions of viewers who have discovered that sometimes the best lullaby comes from the most unexpected source, and you might just find yourself sleeping better than you have in years.
Have you ever wondered what secrets lurk behind one of television's most controversial animated series? Tonight, we're diving deep into the bizarre, hilarious, and sometimes shocking world of Family Guy, with facts so fascinating they might just help you drift off to sleep. But trust me, you'll want to stay awake for these incredible revelations about Seth MacFarlane's groundbreaking creation. Picture this. It's 1999, and a young animator named Seth MacFarlane is sitting in his tiny apartment, sketching out what would become one of the most polarizing shows in television history. Little did he know that his crude drawings of a dysfunctional Rhode Island family would spawn over 2 decades of entertainment, controversy, and cultural impact that continues to this day. Family Guy didn't just stumble into existence by accident. The show's origin story is actually rooted in MacFarlane's college thesis project at the Rhode Island School of Design. Back in 1995, he created a short film called The Life of Larry, featuring a middle-aged man named Larry and his talking dog. This 9-minute animated short caught the attention of television executives and eventually evolved into the Family Guy we know today. What's remarkable is that many of the core elements from that original student film made it directly into the series, proving that sometimes the best ideas come from the most unexpected places. The casting process for Family Guy reveals some truly surprising facts that most fans never discover. Seth MacFarlane himself voices not just 1, but 4 major characters in the show. He's the voice behind Peter Griffin, Brian the dog, Stewie Griffin, and Glenn Quagmire. What's even more impressive is that MacFarlane can seamlessly switch between these vastly different vocal personalities during recording sessions, often having entire conversations with himself as different characters. The other voice actors frequently joke that they feel like they're working with a one-man show, since MacFarlane essentially carries the comedic weight of multiple personalities. Alex Borstein, who voices Lois Griffin, actually wasn't the original choice for the character. The role was initially offered to Lacey Chabert, who you might recognize from Mean Girls and Party of 5. Chabert did voice Meg Griffin in the early seasons, but scheduling conflicts led to her departure, and Mila Kunis stepped in to take over. Meanwhile, Borstein had been working as a writer and consultant on the show before landing the role of Lois, making her transition to voice acting feel completely natural. The show's animation style might look simple, but there's incredible complexity hidden beneath those seemingly basic character designs. Each episode of Family Guy requires approximately 8 months to complete from initial script to final broadcast. The animation process involves hundreds of artists, animators, and technicians working across multiple studios. What's particularly fascinating is that the show uses a hybrid approach, combining traditional hand-drawn animation with computer-generated elements. Those elaborate fight scenes and musical numbers that fans love so much often require specialized animation techniques that push the boundaries of television production budgets. Speaking of production, Family Guy has one of the most unusual writing rooms in television. The writer's room operates more like a comedy club than a traditional television writing environment. Writers are encouraged to pitch their wildest, most outrageous ideas without any filters. Many of the show's most memorable cutaway gags actually come from spontaneous brainstorming sessions where writers try to one-up each other with increasingly absurd scenarios. The famous "Bird is the Word" episode, for example, originated from a writer casually mentioning the old Trashmen song, which then spiraled into an entire episode concept within hours. The show's relationship with censorship and network standards has created some legendary behind-the-scenes stories. During its early years on Fox, Family Guy constantly pushed against network restrictions, leading to numerous battles over content. Some episodes were heavily edited or had entire segments removed before airing. Interestingly, when the show moved to Adult Swim and later back to Fox with renewed popularity, many of these previously censored segments were restored in DVD releases and streaming versions, giving fans access to the creator's original, uncensored vision. Family Guy's cancellation and resurrection story reads like something out of a Hollywood fairy tale. After 3 seasons, Fox canceled the show in 2002 due to declining ratings. However, something unprecedented happened. DVD sales and Adult Swim reruns created a massive surge in popularity. Fans organized campaigns, online petitions gained hundreds of thousands of signatures, and merchandise sales skyrocketed. This grassroots movement convinced Fox to revive the series in 2005, making Family Guy one of the first shows in television history to be brought back to life primarily due to fan demand and home video success. The show's cultural impact extends far beyond television screens. Family Guy has influenced internet culture in ways that most people don't realize. Many popular memes and viral video formats can trace their origins back to Family Guy episodes. The show's Cutaway gag structure has become a template for online content creators, and phrases like "freakin' sweet" and "giggity giggity" have entered everyday vocabulary. Social media platforms are filled with Family Guy reaction GIFs and quotes, demonstrating the show's lasting influence on digital communication. Seth MacFarlane's musical background plays a crucial role in Family Guy's identity that often goes unnoticed. MacFarlane is an accomplished jazz singer and pianist who has released several albums and performed with major orchestras. This musical talent directly influences the show's frequent musical numbers and elaborate song and dance sequences. When characters break into song, MacFarlane often personally composes the music and provides vocal arrangements. Some of the show's most memorable moments, like Stewie and Brian's road trip songs or Peter's various musical adventures, showcase MacFarlane's genuine musical abilities rather than just comedy writing. The voice recording process for Family Guy involves some truly unique techniques that create the show's distinctive sound. Unlike many animated series where actors record their lines separately, Family Guy often brings the core cast together for group recording sessions. This allows for more natural interactions and improvised moments between characters. Seth Green, who voices Griffin, frequently ad-libs during these sessions, leading to some of the characters' most endearing moments. The chemistry between voice actors during these collaborative recording sessions contributes significantly to the family dynamic that makes the show feel authentic despite its outrageous scenarios. Family Guy's international variations reveal fascinating cultural adaptations that most American viewers never see. Different countries have created their own localized versions of certain episodes, replacing American pop culture references with local celebrities and cultural touchstones. The show airs in over 50 countries, and each region has unique censorship requirements that lead to different editing approaches. Some countries focus heavily on removing violence while allowing sexual content, while others take the opposite approach. These international versions sometimes create entirely different comedic rhythms and viewing experiences. The show's relationship with guest stars has produced some incredible behind-the-scenes stories. Many celebrities who appear on Family Guy are longtime fans who specifically request to be part of episodes. Conway Twitty, whose music videos frequently interrupt episodes as random cutaway gags, became a running joke specifically because MacFarlane and the writers found his earnest country music performances hilariously incongruous with the show's irreverent tone. Some guest stars have recorded multiple episodes worth of material during single recording sessions, allowing the show to feature their characters across multiple seasons. Family Guy's approach to controversial topics has created a unique position in television comedy. The show operates under what writers call the equal opportunity offense philosophy, meaning that no topic, group, or individual is considered off-limits for comedic treatment. This approach has generated both criticism and praise from various quarters, but it has also allowed the show to address social issues in ways that more conventional programming cannot. Episodes dealing with topics like religion, politics, and social justice often use humor as a vehicle for presenting multiple perspectives on complex issues. The technical aspects of Family Guy's production reveal impressive attention to detail that viewers might not notice. The show's color palette has evolved significantly over its run, with newer episodes featuring more sophisticated lighting and shading techniques. Background artists create incredibly detailed environments that often include visual jokes and Easter eggs that reward careful viewers. The Drunken Clam, the Griffin house, and other recurring locations contain hundreds of small details that remain consistent across episodes, creating a lived-in feel that supports the show's fictional world. Family Guy's impact on other animated series cannot be overstated. The show's success paved the way for adult-oriented animated comedies like American Dad, The Cleveland Show, and Rick and Morty. Its influence on writing style, particularly the use of non-sequitur cutaway gags and pop culture references, has become a standard template for animated comedy. Many current animated series creators cite Family Guy as a direct influence on their own work, demonstrating its lasting impact on the medium. The show's merchandise empire extends into surprisingly diverse areas. Beyond typical television show merchandise like t-shirts and toys, Family Guy has inspired everything from mobile apps to theme park attractions. The show's characters appear on products ranging from breakfast cereals to automobile accessories. This merchandising success has contributed significantly to the show's financial viability and cultural presence, making Family Guy characters recognizable, even to people who don't regularly watch the series. Family Guy's writing team includes some of television's most talented comedy writers, many of whom have gone on to create their own successful series. The show serves as a training ground for comedy writers, providing them with experience in rapid-fire joke writing, character development, and serialized storytelling. Alumni of the Family Guy writing staff have contributed to shows like The Simpsons, South Park, and Saturday Night Live, spreading the show's comedic influence throughout the industry. The show's approach to character development over multiple seasons reveals sophisticated long-term storytelling strategies. While Family Guy is known for its episodic nature and reset-button storytelling, careful viewers can trace character evolution across seasons. Stewie's gradual shift from world domination fantasies to more nuanced character interactions, Brian's ongoing struggles with alcoholism and romantic relationships, and Peter's various career changes all represent subtle character development that occurs alongside the show's more obvious comedic elements. Family Guy's relationship with current events and topical humor requires incredibly fast production turnarounds that most viewers don't appreciate. The show's writers and animators often work under extreme time pressure to incorporate recent news events and pop culture phenomena into episodes. This rapid response capability has allowed Family Guy to remain culturally relevant across multiple decades, but it also creates significant production challenges that require careful coordination between writing, animation, and broadcast scheduling. The show's musical parodies and elaborate musical sequences often involve complex licensing negotiations and legal considerations. When Family Guy parodies specific songs or musical styles, the production team must navigate copyright laws while creating content that's clearly transformative enough to qualify for fair use protection. Some of the show's most memorable musical moments required months of legal work behind the scenes, demonstrating the complexity involved in creating seemingly simple comedic content. Family Guy's impact on voice acting as a profession has been substantial and lasting. The show's success has elevated voice acting from a relatively niche specialty to a more mainstream entertainment career path. Seth MacFarlane's multiple voice roles have inspired other actors to develop versatile vocal capabilities, and the show's ensemble cast approach has become a model for other animated series. Voice acting workshops and training programs now regularly reference Family Guy techniques and approaches. The show's digital presence and streaming availability have introduced Family Guy to entirely new generations of viewers who experience the series differently than original broadcast audiences. Binge-watching capabilities allow viewers to notice long-term character arcs and recurring jokes that might be missed during weekly viewing. Streaming platforms have also made international versions and extended cuts available to broader audiences, creating new ways to experience familiar content. Family Guy's influence on comedy writing extends beyond animation into live-action television and film. The show's rapid-fire reference style and willingness to break the fourth wall have influenced writers across multiple mediums. Comedy Central roasts, Saturday Night Live sketches, and even stand-up comedy routines now regularly employ techniques that were pioneered or popularized by Family Guy writers. The show's approach to holiday episodes and special events demonstrates sophisticated audience engagement strategies. Family Guy's Christmas, Halloween, and other holiday episodes often feature elaborate production values and guest stars, creating appointment television that generates significant viewer loyalty. These special episodes frequently become fan favorites that get rewatched annually, contributing to the show's lasting cultural presence. As we reach the end of our journey through these fascinating Family Guy facts, it's clear that this seemingly simple animated series contains layers of complexity, creativity, and cultural influence that most viewers never fully appreciate. From Seth MacFarlane's one-man vocal circus to the show's groundbreaking approach to adult animation, Family Guy has carved out a unique space in television history that continues to evolve and surprise audiences. Whether you're a longtime fan or someone just discovering the series, these behind-the-scenes insights reveal the incredible amount of talent, dedication, and creative risk-taking that goes into every episode. The show's ability to remain relevant and controversial after more than 2 decades speaks to its creators' understanding of comedy, culture, and the ever-changing landscape of entertainment. So the next time you're settling in for a Family Guy marathon, remember that you're not just watching a cartoon about a dysfunctional family in Rhode Island. You're experiencing the result of thousands of hours of creative work by some of the most talented people in entertainment, all coming together to create something that's simultaneously ridiculous and profound, offensive and heartwarming, simple and incredibly sophisticated. Sweet dreams. And remember, somewhere out there, Seth MacFarlane is probably already working on the next episode that will surprise, delight, and possibly outrage audiences all over again. That's the magic of Family Guy. And that's what makes it truly special in the vast landscape of television entertainment.
You know that feeling when you're lying in bed, scrolling through your phone at 2 in the morning, and you just need something to help your brain wind down? Well, tonight we're diving into the wonderfully weird world of Family Guy with some absolutely random facts that'll either put you to sleep or keep you up wondering how Seth MacFarlane's mind actually works. So grab your pillow, get comfortable, and let's explore the bizarre universe of Quahog together. Did you know that Family Guy was actually canceled not once, but twice? The show first got the axe in 2002 after just 3 seasons. But something incredible happened that brought it back from the dead. Adult Swim started airing reruns, and the show's popularity exploded like Peter Griffin trying to open a jar of pickles. The DVD sales went through the roof, and suddenly Fox realized they'd made a massive mistake. So in 2005, Family Guy came back from cancellation, making it one of the very few shows in television history to pull off this resurrection trick twice. Speaking of resurrections, here's something that might surprise you about Brian Griffin's voice. Seth MacFarlane, who voices the intellectual dog, actually based Brian's sophisticated accent and mannerisms on his own personality. MacFarlane has said in interviews that Brian is essentially his voice in the show, which explains why the dog often serves as the voice of reason, at least when he's not having his own ridiculous adventures. It's almost like MacFarlane created his own animated alter ego to comment on the chaos around him. Now here's a fact that'll make you appreciate the show's attention to detail, even in its most absurd moments. The Griffin family's address is 31 Spooner Street, and this isn't just a random number pulled out of thin air. The address is actually a reference to the street where one of the show's early writers lived. But what's even more interesting is that if you look carefully at episodes throughout the series, you'll notice that the layout of the Griffin house has changed multiple times. Sometimes there are different numbers of windows, the staircase moves around, and rooms appear and disappear like they're in some kind of cartoon physics experiment. Let's talk about Stewie Griffin for a moment, because this character has one of the most fascinating evolution arcs in animated television. In the early seasons, Stewie was genuinely diabolical, plotting to kill his mother Lois and take over the world with elaborate schemes that would make a Bond villain jealous. But as the series progressed, the writers gradually shifted his character from evil mastermind to sophisticated, cultured, and eventually openly exploring his sexuality. Seth MacFarlane has mentioned that this evolution happened naturally as they discovered what made the character funnier and more relatable. Here's something that might blow your mind about the show's production process. Each episode of Family Guy takes approximately 10 months to complete, from start to finish. That means when you're watching a new episode, the writers were working on it almost a year ago. This lengthy production timeline is part of why the show sometimes feels like it's commenting on events that happened ages ago, but it also explains the incredible attention to detail in the animation and voice work. Did you know that the famous chicken fights between Peter and Ernie the Giant Chicken weren't originally planned to become a recurring gag? The first chicken fight appeared in a Season 1 episode as a quick throwaway joke, but it became so popular with fans that the writers kept bringing it back, each time making the fights longer and more elaborate. These sequences have become some of the most expensive and time-consuming parts of the show to animate, sometimes taking up several minutes of screen time with incredibly detailed action sequences. Speaking of expensive sequences, the show's cutaway gags, those random flashbacks that interrupt the main story, were actually inspired by classic comedy shows like The Carol Burnett Show. Seth MacFarlane wanted to recreate that feeling of sketches within a larger show, but he took it to the extreme by making the cutaways completely disconnected from the main plot. Some of these gags have become so iconic that they've spawned their own merchandise and internet memes. Here's a heartwarming fact about the show's impact on real families. Despite all the dysfunction and chaos of the Griffin family, many real families have said that watching Family Guy together has actually brought them closer. There's something about laughing at Peter's ridiculous antics that makes your own family's problems seem manageable in comparison. The show has become a bonding experience for parents and older children who can appreciate the humor together. Let's dive into some voice acting trivia that'll make you listen to the characters differently. Mila Kunis, who voices Meg Griffin, was only 14 years old when she started on the show. She actually lied about her age during the audition process, and by the time the producers found out how young she really was, they were so impressed with her work that they kept her on. She's been voicing Meg for over 20 years now, which means she's literally grown up with the character. Here's something interesting about the show's relationship with censorship. While Family Guy pushes boundaries constantly, there are actually several episodes that have never aired on television due to content issues. These episodes exist in various forms, sometimes appearing on DVD releases or streaming platforms with heavy warnings. The writers often create content knowing it might be too controversial for broadcast, almost as a creative challenge to see how far they can push the envelope. The character of Cleveland Brown was so popular that he got his own spin-off show, but here's something you might not know about that decision. The Cleveland show was partly created because Mike Henry, who voices Cleveland, wanted to explore what it would be like to have an animated show centered around an African-American family. While the spin-off only lasted 4 seasons, it allowed the writers to tackle different types of stories and social issues than they could in Family Guy. Did you know that several major celebrities have turned down guest appearances on Family Guy because they felt the show was too controversial? But for every celebrity who said no, there were dozens who said yes, often because they were fans of the show themselves. Some of the most surprising guest stars have been people you'd never expect to appear on an adult animated comedy, including several politicians and news anchors who were willing to make fun of themselves. Here's a production fact that shows how much work goes into creating the show's signature style. The animators use a specific color palette that's deliberately muted compared to other animated shows. This choice was made to give Family Guy a slightly more realistic feel, even though the content is completely absurd. The character designs are also intentionally simple, which allows the animators to focus on facial expressions and body language that enhance the comedy. Let's talk about the show's impact on internet culture. Family Guy was one of the first television shows to really embrace social media and online fan communities. The writers regularly read fan feedback and sometimes incorporate popular fan theories or suggestions into actual episodes. This interaction between creators and fans was revolutionary for television at the time and has influenced how many other shows approach their online presence. Here's something that might surprise you about the show's educational value. Despite its reputation for crude humor, Family Guy has actually introduced many viewers to classical music, literature, and historical references they might never have encountered otherwise. The show's cutaway gags often reference everything from Shakespeare to classical composers, and many fans have said they discovered new interests because of jokes they didn't initially understand. The relationship between Family Guy and The Simpsons has always been interesting, especially since both shows air on the same network. There have been several crossover episodes and references between the shows, but there's also been some friendly rivalry. Seth MacFarlane has always acknowledged The Simpsons as a major influence, but he's also tried to carve out a distinct identity for Family Guy that sets it apart from Matt Groening's creation. Here's a fact about the show's international reach that might surprise you. Family Guy has been translated into dozens of languages and adapted for different cultures around the world. In some countries, certain jokes have to be completely rewritten because the original references don't translate culturally. This has led to some interesting variations where different versions of the same episode can have completely different gags while maintaining the same basic story structure. Did you know that several episodes of Family Guy have been turned into stage productions? There have been live performances of selected episodes at various comedy festivals, with voice actors performing their roles on stage while animation plays in the background. These performances have given fans a unique way to experience the show and have shown how well the writing works, even without the visual component. The show's theme song, which seems simple enough, actually went through multiple versions before the creators settled on the current one. The original pilot had a completely different opening sequence, and there have been several special versions created for holiday episodes and milestone celebrations. The song has become so iconic that it's been covered by numerous bands and has appeared in various other media as a cultural reference. Point. Here's something about the writing process that shows how collaborative the show really is. While Seth MacFarlane created the show and voices several main characters, the writing staff includes dozens of people who contribute jokes, storylines, and character development. Some of the funniest gags in the show come from writers who might never be credited on screen, but whose contributions are essential to the show's success. Let's talk about how Family Guy handles continuity, or rather, how it completely ignores it when convenient. Characters die and come back to life. Relationships change from episode to episode, and major life events are forgotten or contradicted regularly. This approach to storytelling was initially criticized by some viewers who expected more consistency, but it's actually become one of the show's defining characteristics, allowing for maximum creative freedom. The merchandising empire built around Family Guy is absolutely massive, including everything from action figures to clothing to home decor items featuring the characters. But here's something interesting. Some of the most popular merchandise features quotes and images from the most controversial episodes, suggesting that fans embrace the show's boundary-pushing content rather than shy away from it. Finally, here's a fact that brings us full circle to why Family Guy works so well as late-night viewing. The show's creators have always understood that comedy is often about timing and rhythm, and they've structured episodes to have natural peaks and valleys of energy. This makes it perfect for falling asleep to, because your brain can follow the familiar patterns even as you drift off, and the comfort of recognizing character voices and running gags creates a soothing background that helps many people relax. As you settle in for sleep tonight, remember that somewhere in the world, there are animators working on new Family Guy episodes that won't air for almost a year, writers brainstorming increasingly ridiculous scenarios for Peter to stumble into, and voice actors bringing these beloved characters to life. The world of Quahog continues to evolve and surprise us, proving that even after more than 20 years, there are still new stories to tell and new ways to make us laugh at the beautiful absurdity of it all. Sweet dreams, and may your subconscious be filled with talking dogs, evil babies, and the gentle chaos of the Griffin family household.